Good morning. Welcome to the February 27th, 2026 meeting of the California Privacy Protection Agency Board. We are meeting today in Sacramento and it's 9:10 a.m. I am very pleased to be here with my fellow board members in person and virtually. Welcome Board Member Jill Hamer virtually on Zoom. And I welcome all the members of the public here in person and those of you joining us on Zoom. Before we get started, as those of you who have joined us before know, I need to run through a few quick reminders and legal notices. Please make sure that your microphone is muted when you're not speaking. If you're here in person, please silence your cell phone to avoid any interruptions, and I will do that myself right now. Okay. And finally, please note that this meeting is being recorded. The meeting is in a hybrid format, meaning that we have capacity for both online and in-person participation. As I mentioned, Board Member Jill Hamer is joining us remotely, and the members of the CPPA staff and the board, the rest of the board are here in person. We look forward to offering the public the opportunity to comment in both formats. The hybrid format does create technical complexities even in this day and age, so please bear with us if we experience any technical issues. We will pause the meeting to address them as needed. The in-person portion of this meeting is being held at the Cannabis Control Appeals Panel Hearing Room in Sacramento, and we greatly appreciate the CCAP team for their hospitality in lending us their boardroom. Today's meeting will follow the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act as required by law. The agenda and supporting materials are available here in Sacramento and on the CPPA website under Meetings and Events, the meeting for today. You may notice board members accessing their laptops, phones, or other devices during the meeting. They are using the devices solely to access board meeting materials. The board welcomes public comment, and I will call for it as we move through the agenda today. Please note the rules for public comment, which are also part of Bagley-Keene. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to make their comment on an agenda item. Under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, both board members and members of the public may only discuss items that are listed on the agenda, and accordingly, comments must relate to the agenda item currently being discussed. Please contain your comments to that item. There are 2 exceptions to that rule. First, we have an item for general public comment. This is number 9 on the agenda for today, and it's titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. When I call this item, members of the public can comment on topics that are not on today's agenda. Please note, though, that this item is only for the public. The board cannot comment on the items not on the agenda and can only listen to public comments and not respond in general. The second exception is if you have a suggestion for a topic the board should consider at a future meeting, you can bring that up when I call an item which is designated for proposing future agenda items, which is item number 10 today. As I mentioned, this is a hybrid meeting, so I will run through briefly the method for commenting in both in person and via Zoom. After each agenda item, there will be an opportunity for questions and discussion by board members. I will then invite public comment, and each speaker will have that 3 minutes. If I happen to forget to call for public comment on an item, please raise your hand either in person or in Zoom, and the moderator will make sure that you're recognized. If you are participating via Zoom and wish to speak on an item, please wait until I call for public comment and then use the raise hand feature under reactions located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're joining by phone, press *9 on your phone to show the moderator that you are raising your hand. When it's your turn, the moderator will call your name and ask you to unmute. And Zoom users, you can use the unmute button, and phone users, you can use *6. So *9 on the phone to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. After your comment on Zoom or phone, the moderator will go ahead and mute you again. Please do note that the board cannot see Zoom participants. We will only be able to hear your voice. If you'd like, you may identify yourself when speaking. This is completely optional, and you may use a pseudonym when logging in into Zoom as well. If you're here in person and wish to comment on an item, please wait for the public comment period to be announced and then form a line at the podium. When called, speak clearly and directly into the microphone so remote participants can hear you and your remarks can be recorded in the meeting record. The podium microphone can be a little temperamental, as we all know if we have taken part in these meetings before. So please do be sure to speak directly into it, more directly than you think you ever would need to. As with the Zoom attendees, it is helpful if you identify yourself, but it's entirely voluntary and you are free and should feel free to not state your name or use a pseudonym. As far as technical issues with a hybrid meeting, first, I want to thank Serena Carwile and her team for managing all the technical side of today's meeting. And if you're attending remotely and experience issues such as the audio dropping out, please email info@cppa.ca.gov, which is India November Foxtrot Oscar at CPPA for California Privacy Protection Agency .ca.gov. That inbox is monitored throughout the meeting. If there are technical issues, we will pause so that everyone can participate in the meeting. We will take breaks as needed today, including one for lunch. I will announce each break and I will provide any information I have about when we plan to return so that members of the public can leave and come back if they wish before we begin again. Note that we don't always have perfect information about when we will return, but I usually try to give at least a minimum time so people know that they won't miss anything. Please note that the 10th item today is a closed agenda item, and I will explain that when I call it. My many thanks to the board members for their service and everyone working today and who has worked to make today's meeting possible. These meetings are a big production and a lot of hands go into them. Special thanks to Executive Director Tom Kemp, Philip Laird, our General Counsel, and all of the CPPA team presenting today and everyone who supported the team in developing the materials and doing the work behind the scenes that we will hear about. I would like to officially welcome our moderator, Ms. Serena Carwile, and ask her to please conduct the roll call.
Thank you. Board Member Hamer.
Present.
Board Member Liebert.
Present.
Board Member McTaggart.
Here.
Board Member Ozer.
Present.
Chair Irvin.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have 5 present members and no absences.
Thank you, Ms. Carwile, and welcome everyone. The board has established a quorum. I would like to remind board members that we will be taking a roll call vote on any action items today. We now turn to agenda item number 2, which is a chairperson's update, which I haven't done in a while. And welcome to our new board member, Nicole Ozer. I have a few things, all celebratory beyond belief, so I'm very happy to present this agenda item. I will begin with the very proud announcement, which is not necessarily new. You may have seen it on social media, that our own attorney, Liz Travis Allen, has been selected as the 2026 California Privacy Lawyer of the Year by the California Lawyers Association Privacy Law section. Excuse me. This is a major honor for those of you who aren't attorneys. Ms. Allen is actually our second attorney to receive this honor. Lisa Kim received the honor in 2023, and we are incredibly proud of both of them. You will perhaps know Ms. Allen very well from her consistent presence as the delete request and opt-out platform and the attendant regulations are being developed. She's a leading force in California privacy law in the California Lawyers Association words, and which the CLA also specifies that the award honors her exceptional contributions to privacy regulation, innovation, and public service. As I mentioned, she's an attorney. She's in the legal division, but she's such an all-rounder as the product and regulatory counsel and sort of de facto product manager for DROP, that her hands are absolutely the sort of basis for the wonderfully successful DROP system we'll be hearing about later today, excuse me. We are incredibly proud of Ms. Allen and impressed with her ability to adjust to circumstances and take on roles that are far beyond what one might expect an attorney at a regulatory agency would do, and to do it all beautifully, skillfully, and with exceptional grace. This is an extraordinary honor that is incredibly well-deserved. Congratulations, Ms. Allen. Next, I would like to recommend, we've actually already selected, no need for a recommendation. I would like to welcome Ms. Sabrina Boyson-Ross, who we are very excited is here to serve as the agency's inaugural Chief Privacy Auditor. As the Chief Privacy Auditor, she will lead the newly formed Audits Division, and that will develop and apply privacy compliance and procedures and conduct examinations of businesses and business practices. This is an innovative position that is from the California Privacy Rights Act. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat this morning, but I have no less enthusiasm to welcome you, Ms. Ross. And it is a role that she will define for California and without doubt beyond. So we are absolutely delighted to welcome her. Her previous position was as Director of Public Policy at Meta, and she was before that had senior privacy and policy leadership roles at Uber, Apple, and Nautum. Began her career as a privacy and data security attorney in private practice. So she brings deep legal, regulatory, policy expertise, as well as deep expertise in the practices of companies and the technology that they develop and deploy. We're very delighted to have you, and welcome, Ms. Ross. Next, we have as I said, later today, we will hear some more exciting news about the delete request and opt-out platform. I want to highlight some other exciting news reports about the regulations that the board and the staff developed over the last few years and approved last year. Those have also been discussed often in the legal press among experts as companies prepare to comply, but also in the broader press. There was just yesterday, a sponsored article in the Wall Street Journal by one of the big consulting companies I won't name, which was walking through how important it was for companies to be ready and how important the regulations were. So it's nice to see that businesses are preparing for these important regulations and will be ready to support consumers in that way. That brings me to the very exciting and wonderful announcement that I'm always excited about, which is the release of the agency's annual report yesterday, I believe, for 2025. It has even more on the development of the regulations, lots on DROP, but again, saving that for later. And I would like to highlight a couple of other things. One is the agency's work on enforcement. Please do read into the annual report to see some of the incredible enforcement proceedings that the agency has undertaken and actions that the Enforcement Division has successfully completed in 2025. These actions have protected consumers and given guidance to businesses to help them understand how to comply in advance of an enforcement action. I'd also like to especially highlight the amazing work that tends to happen behind the scenes. We do have the benefit of an administration and budget report from our Deputy Director for Administration today, but we often do not hear about the crucial infrastructural work that goes on in the agency behind the scenes. And as the annual report reports, we really do have the A team of administrative process in the California Privacy Protection Agency. Indeed, the team won an award this year for its work with contracting work, with small businesses and disabled veteran-owned businesses. I wanted to highlight that especially because I'm very proud that the agency is contracting with, working with the small businesses who can provide exceptional service to the people of the state of California, but who might have more challenges with the procurement process at the beginning. And so I really commend the administration team for all their great work and for the award. Those are just a few mentions of what is Ms. White 25-page report, something like that. It is chock full, it is beautiful, and everybody should look at it. And then last but not least, I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Nicole Ozer to the board. She is serving as the Assembly's appointee to the board, replacing Dr. Brandy Noneke. Board member Ozer is the inaugural executive director of the Center for Constitutional Democracy at UC Law San Francisco. She was previously the founding director and the longtime leader of the Technology and Civil Liberties program at the ACLU of Northern California. Board member Ozer spearheaded the passage of the California Electronic Communications Privacy Act, known as CAL-ECPA. For those of you who are experts, I will not talk about ECPA because of the pain. And for those of you who are not experts, I will not talk about ECPA because of the pain. But suffice to say that Ms. Ozer and her team successfully developed legislation that was passed that protects Californians at a higher level than the federal ECPA law, and it is a great gift in California. She also spearheaded the California Reader Privacy Act, which looks to protect the books that you are reading of books on things like tablets and your computer, more like books that you read, paper books that you read when you take them off the shelf. Reading is a fundamental privacy right. Being able to take in information anonymously, to understand it, to decide what you want to do with it. These are foundational to privacy and indeed to free expression in the United States. The Supreme Court has recognized it over and over. But once you are reading a book electronically, everything can be tracked. And so once again, California is very fortunate to have additional protections in the California Reader Privacy Act, which Ms. Ozer was in no small part responsible for. You didn't know I was going to go on about these laws, did you? But these are some of my favorite laws. Anyway, so she also has designed groundbreaking surveillance reform strategies and worked with companies and others to lead the national effort to have better privacy protections. Her public interest technology work was most recently honored with a California Senate member's resolution for unwavering dedication to defending and promoting civil liberties in the digital world, invaluable contributions to people throughout California, and meritorious service to humanity. She earned her JD with a certificate of law and technology from Berkeley Law, which I mentioned because she was the very first student in the Samuelson Law, Technology, and Public Policy Clinic, where I teach today. So I'm very delighted to welcome Board Member Ozer, excited that she is bringing her expertise, vision, and collaborative style to the agency. Thank you for your service. Mr. Lieber, please.
I just want to join. First, I want to congratulate the Speaker of the Assembly for making a brilliant selection. Very grateful for that. I've known Nicole for a lot of years, and absolutely admired her work. I'm so excited for her to be joining this board. We have such a fantastic staff that you illuminated. And to have Nikki joining right now is just so timely and perfect. She's a national leader on so many of the issues that we're dealing with. And I'm supposed to talk more loudly, which I'm usually told. A little bit closer, is that better? Okay, thank you. You've noted all the laws she's been involved in, but she's actually been really a spirit behind so much of the privacy work that has been undertaken in this state, and it is a great gift to California. So thank you, Speaker Rivas, and welcome, Nikki.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. Mr. McTaggart?
Well, I'd like to echo the chair's words on a couple of things. First of all, welcome, Sabrina. It's been 6 years that the position has been open, and you are the inaugural person. So congratulations also to the executive director for finding you, and thank you for taking the job. And we are all delighted to have a real build out of a job that was identified in the statute as an important job. And so I'm really grateful that it's finally getting filled. I'm grateful it's you, so thank you for joining. And then I just wanted to say welcome to Nicole. You know, I was going back through my notes, and I actually think, you know, when I first started off this privacy journey that kind of led us all here, Nicole was the first person I think I talked to. I mean, I literally think she was gracious. I was just nobody, and she took the meeting, and she was sort of like, well, it's maybe an idea, but you know, who are you? And so, but she was really helpful, and she provided so much feedback all the way through that first, for the first CCPA in 2018. So it was really, I'm so grateful to her, and it's a reunion of sorts here to come back and be working with her. I'm very grateful for the chance to do that again, and it's kind of full circle. So welcome, and I'm super happy that you got appointed.
Thank you. Other comments from board members? All right. Oh, I do. I'm sorry, Ms. Hamer. I have to look. I will figure this out and make sure that I don't leave you hanging in the future. Ms. Hamer, please go ahead.
So I just want to, I'm sorry, you don't want me there in person, but I wish I were there in person to meet you. But I'm very excited both about Sabrina and Nicole, so I look forward to meeting you in person.
Thank you, Ms. Hamer. Yes, please, Ms. Ozer.
Thank you so much, Chair Urban. Thank you, fellow members of the board. I just want to thank Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas for appointing me to the board. I want to thank the agency staff for all of the helpful orientation and onboarding before today's meeting, and just really look forward to working with my fellow board members to support the important work of the agency. So thank you so much, and so glad to be here.
Thank you. And again, welcome, Board Member Ozer. I would now like to open this item up for public comment.
This is for agenda item number 2, Chairperson's Update. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. Again, this is for agenda item number 2. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much. With that, we will now move on to agenda item number 3, which is an update from our Executive Director, Tom Kemp. I will turn it over to you, Mr. Kemp. Please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chair Urban. I wanted to give the board an update on the agency's activities since we last met nearly 4 months ago. Cal Privacy is laser focused on continuously executing against our 2024 to 2027 strategic plan. As a reminder, that plan is available on the Cal Privacy website on the About Us page. Specifically, we're focused on delivering on 4 main strategic goals of 1, strengthening California privacy rights, 2, vigorously enforcing our privacy laws, 3, strengthening public education, outreach, and engagement, and 4, operational excellence. Let me give an update on all 4 areas since our last board meeting. Specific to the goal of strengthening California privacy rights, one key pillar of this goal is successfully delivering the delete, request, and opt-out platform, or DROP, as mandated by statute. We successfully met the January 1st, 2026 deadline with a system that has been highly available and whose adoption has exceeded everyone's expectations. I'm pleased to announce that as of this morning, over 242,000 Californians have signed up for the service. Mr. Andrusov, Ms. Rosenblatt, and Ms. White will provide more details on the drop rollout in their presentation. But I would like to thank the entire team, as well as our partner, the California Department of Technology, for delivering such an innovative platform that once again shows that California is the laboratory of democracy when it comes to consumer protection for the nation. I would also like to thank Governor Newsom and Attorney General Bonta for their support in recent press releases promoting the DROP system. We are further strengthening California privacy rights by working with legislators to author our approved bill proposals. The aptly named Expanding Privacy Rights Act, or SB 923, authored by State Senator Becker, addresses 2 of the 3 bill proposals approved by the board last November. We thank Senator Becker for his close partnership with the agency, first with the California Delete Act and now with this bill. We will diligently apply what worked with the agency's first ever sponsored bill that was signed into law, last year's California Opt Me Out Act, by building a broad coalition of supporters, actively meeting with and engaging legislators and the governor's office, and engaging with industry. For example, since I've joined the agency, Deputy Director Mahoney and I have met directly with over 70 of the 120 legislators and/or their staff, and we will continue our engagement with key stakeholders. Ms. Mahoney will provide additional updates on this bill in her presentation. We are also looking to strengthen California privacy rights through regulation. For example, the topic of how to reduce friction in the exercise of privacy rights is a key focus of ours. Mr. Laird will give you an update and a timeline for our plans for new regulations in this area. On to the second goal, as it relates to vigorously enforcing our privacy rights, a reminder, Mr. Macco presented the annual enforcement plan at the September board meeting. But one key update since the last board meeting was the creation of a data broker enforcement strike force within our enforcement division to investigate privacy violations by the data broker industry. I am pleased to say that this focus has led to significant increases in data broker registration. In June of 2025, Privacy Rights Clearinghouse wrote a letter to the AG and the agency claiming that 459 data brokers were registered with the agency as of spring of 2025. I am pleased to say that as of December 2025, there were over 540 data brokers registered. And as Ms. Rosenblatt will discuss, I'm also pleased to announce that as of February of 2026, we are now over 575 registered data brokers. No other state or even past data broker registries here in California have as many registered data brokers. Furthermore, we successfully onboarded an author for our whistleblower proposal to assist our enforcement activities. We drew attention to the need for this legislation through a very successful joint press conference that we held at the Capitol just a few days ago. The bill, AB 2021, the Whistleblower Protection and Privacy Act, authored by Assemblymember Chavo, has already garnered support from civil society organizations. We thank Assemblymember Chavo for her collaboration on this critical piece of legislation, as well as her staff. Ms. Mahoney will discuss the bill further in her presentation. And then finally, and as mentioned by Chair Urban, we're very pleased to have brought on Ms. Sabrina Ross, the agency's first ever privacy auditor. As Mr. McTaggart reminded us that the CPRA explicitly mandated this position. The Audits Division will be a great complement to our Enforcement Division, and we expect great synergy. She's, as you know, she's here at the board meeting, and we certainly wish Ms. Ross success as she builds out our new Audits Division. Specific to the third goal of strengthening public education, outreach, and engagement, Ms. White did present the annual plan for this goal at the September board meeting. Here are a few updates since November. We are pleased to see multiple members of the legislature promoting DROP in their newsletters and social media posts. We are also pleased that other state agencies such as the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, DFPI, and the California Public Utilities Commission, CPUC, are letting us evangelize Drop to their audience. And it has been amazing the depth and breadth of organic social media postings and press articles on Drop. Ms. White will provide more details on our Drop awareness plan, but her team deserves a great deal of credit for the significant website enhancements that were required by the Drop launch. The transition to the nickname Cal Privacy has been seamless, making it easier for Californians to find us and our website. Speaking of our website, we are making progress in merging the cppa.ca.gov with the privacy.ca.gov website, with that coming to fruition by late summer. We also continue to engage with sister state agencies and joint community outreach. For example, we have done many senior Scam Stopper events since our last update. And then finally, regarding operational excellence, Ms. Chidambira will present our annual and administrative and operations update. I'm pleased to say that we are meeting our hiring and budgetary goals and have experienced zero executive level turnover. Ms. Chidambira will provide more details, but I should also point out that you can read more about what we have achieved operationally from an operational excellence by reviewing our recently released annual report, which Ms. Urban flagged for you, which is another key milestone that we have delivered. Furthermore, I will note the annual report goes into more details on our strategic goals that I briefly highlighted this morning. The annual report goes into detail how we fully executed against these strategic goals in 2025, and I would join Ms. Urban in encouraging the public to check out the annual report, which is available on the About Us section of our website. And as Ms. Urban mentioned, speaking of operational excellence, the agency is very pleased that Liz Allen was last week awarded the Privacy Lawyer of the Year award by the California Lawyers Association, and myself and other agency personnel were pleased to have experienced her amazing acceptance speech. With that, I'll take any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kemp, for that exciting and comprehensive update. Are there questions or comments from the board? And I will just give a heads up, I might need to do a little bit of traffic control for the things that we will be discussing under other agenda items. We can't discuss them here, but we can pick them up later today. So any comments, questions? Was that a yes? Okay, I couldn't tell if you were saying no or, okay.
Yeah, I'll have a chance to say it later, but just it's extraordinary. 250,000 people almost in, we're not even February, we're a nonprofit. We're not, I mean, it's just extraordinary. My hat is off to the team for really, and it was a team effort. You got handed a lot of responsibility and not very many resources. And so it's just stunning. 250,000 people, and that's just going to grow from there. So well done. And then on the whistleblower, congratulations on bringing that up to the 4 I Lost Courage. Back in the day, I thought that was going to be one step too far, but it's a super important concept. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart. Other comments, questions? No? All right. With that, Ms. Carwile, I'd like to request public comment on this item.
This is for agenda item number 3, Executive Director's Update. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. This is for agenda item number 3. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Wonderful. Well, I guess it's a neutral. It's a neutral situation. I hope that the public are as impressed with the work of the team that Mr. Kemp laid out as we are, which is highly impressed, and will be, if they are not already, seeing the benefits in their lives. So we're really delighted by the update. Mr. Kemp, thank you so much, and thank you for the incredible work of everybody at the agency. With that, we will move on to the promised and very anticipated by me at least, agenda item number 4, which is an update on the delete request and opt-out platform, known familiarly as Drop, which Mr. Kemp alluded to and highlighted for us to get us ready to discuss where we are with it. And this will be presented by Assistant Deputy Director of Public and External Affairs for the Delete Act, Ms. Marissa Rosenblatt, and our Chief of IT, Mr. Artem Andrusov, and Ms. Megan White, our Deputy Director of Public and External Affairs. And when they are ready, they will go ahead and get started. For now, I would ask everybody to please turn your attention to the materials for this agenda item. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Rosenblatt, in your time.
Close, real close. Is that better? Okay, let's try this. Closer. Closer. Okay, all right. Good morning. Really excited to be here and to provide an update on the launch of Drop. I'll give a little bit of an overview of launch itself, talk about support, and also some insights of what's to come next. Mr. Andrusov will talk about kind of key product metrics from our first 8 weeks of operation. And finally, Ms. White will share an overview on communication efforts related to Drop. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit of an overview of what we'll cover. Next slide. So Drop launched successfully on January 1st, 2026. We flipped the switch just around midnight, so it was really an exciting launch for a large part of the team. This was a culmination of many years of effort from many individuals, so I want to take a moment to really thank everyone along the way. The list is too long, too many people to name. I'm just on month 5, but there was so much hard work that went into making this a success. I also want to give a special thank you to our partners at the California Department of Technology, without whom this launch wouldn't have been possible. So just to recap, the launch enabled California residents to submit deletion requests and also data brokers to register with the agency via Drop. The launch was a success from many perspectives. We launched on time and in compliance with all of our statutory deadlines. Overall system and operational health was strong despite much higher than expected traffic and request volume. And consumer interest, driven largely by positive, unpaid press and social media coverage, was really high and vastly exceeded all of our expectations. To date, as was mentioned, we have more than 242,000 deletion requests and over 575 data brokers registered. And the number you see on the screen is, over 18,000 requests that were submitted just within the first 48 hours of launch. Really incredible. The holiday, it was New Year's Day, and we were seeing requests kind of come in real time. And again, Ms. White will cover more about the press and media that drove this traffic during her portion of the update. So I'll pass it next to Mr. Andrusov to talk a little more about some of the key product metrics since launch.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosenblatt. I'll now gladly walk you through some of the key product metrics and insights from our first 8 weeks of operating Drop. On the next slide, please. On this slide, you only see 3 indicators. I'll provide additional data verbally, so the picture is complete, and I'll follow the same path as consumer takes when they use our system. As our director, Kemp, and Ms. Rosenblatt noted earlier, as of this morning, we have more than 242 deletion requests submitted by consumers. As a reminder, before consumers can submit a request, they must first verify their status as a California resident. Our records show that about 98% of those who attempt residency verification are verified successfully as California residents. And the verification process happens automatically within Drop and is managed by the California Department of Technology's Identity Gateway team. Consumers have 2 ways to verify residency with Drop, by entering personal information or by signing in via login.gov. Approximately 70% of the use former option, and 30% either create or sign in using or adding an existing login.gov account. For the small group who aren't verified automatically, residency review option is available, and about 1% of total consumers submit a review request. And these are processed through a workflow by our support team, ensuring people have a path forward. Once a consumer successfully verifies their residency, they land on drop request page and there can fill out and submit their deletion request. Making this process simple and fast was among our top priorities when we designed the system. And based on our data, the average time to complete the request is only 8 minutes from start to finish. While consumers are required to provide at least one identifier besides their name and date of birth, through messaging we encourage them to submit more data points to increase chances of matching. And across all submitted requests, we see the following. 99% requests have at least one zip code. 94 contain phone numbers. 91% of requests have emails. And 24% have VINs, vehicle identification numbers. 10% have MAIDs, mobile advertisement. And 3% have connected TV IDs. Doesn't work. As of now, we have total 1.2 million identifiers in the system. Oh, okay. Yeah. In general, this is in line with our expectations. The more people are familiar and easier an identifier to find, the more likely consumers include it. And we see an opportunity to improve messaging related to unique identifiers like VIN, MAID, and TV IDs to encourage users to locate and input those identifiers. Speaking of submission rates, so far our peak day saw 30,000 requests and 2,136 requests in the busiest hour. After a consumer submits the request, we give them an option to subscribe for updates, either for our general Cal Privacy newsletter or updates specifically about drop. So far, 85,000 people signed up for drop updates and 43,000 people have signed up to our Cal Privacy newsletter. Being able to communicate with updates related to drop will be extremely valuable, especially as we are preparing to begin the deletion request processing by data brokers in August. And finally, at the end of the process, we provide an opportunity for consumers to leave a rating and provide feedback. And our current average rating since launch is 4.26 out of 5. And the latest weekly average is 4.42. And with that, we'll turn back to Ms. Rosenblatt, who will share more details on feedback that can.
Great, thank you. So Mr. Andrusov went through some of the high-level kind of product numbers. As we transition into support, I also wanted to share some of the qualitative feedback that we've received from consumers, kind of in their words. So I'll read a couple of examples of feedback we've received thus far. First, not only is this process incredibly streamlined and easy, it's another resource provided to Californians that makes me proud of our state and its leadership for protecting its citizens and giving them options to protect what's important to them. Next example, very helpful. I was even able to go on my TV and change ad settings. A third example, this rocks. Thank you so much for giving us tools to protect our privacy. In addition to these highly complimentary bits of feedback, we also get examples of kind of helpful and constructive feedback that can help us guide potential product enhancements. So I'll read a couple of those next. First, I would appreciate if we could enter more than 3 emails to be deleted by data brokers under drop. Thank you for the service. Next, it was a good experience. I'd put a video on the Get Started page for those of us who are visual learners. Thanks for drop. And finally, a third example, give us a heads up to keep VIN and MAID ID ready when we start the process to save time. And so I wanted to share these as we kind of go into the support section, just to really, kind of center ourselves thinking about voice of consumer. I think keeping this tight feedback loop between what consumers are saying and kind of how the product and service is working is going to be really important as we evolve things going forward. So when we talk about support, we're really talking about all of the inbound communication that we get from consumers as well as data brokers about activities within Drop. I'll focus primarily on consumers as part of this section with the note that we're preparing for a lot more inbound from data brokers as they begin integration and preparation for request processing, which will start in August. But on the consumer side, first, I'll say most consumers are able to submit requests without the need to contact us at all. For those who do kind of want to get in touch, simply have questions or maybe an issue in the process, we direct them to send us a message. They can do that either on the privacy.ca.gov website or via contact form within Drop itself, and we respond to these inquiries via email. The total number of tickets that we've received in this way has been over 6,500 since launch. And that number is pretty evenly split in half across kind of your general inquiries or questions from consumers. And the other half is kind of residency review requests that consumers are making so they can get through the process. And to talk a little bit about the first category of general tickets, kind of the top categories we see there are first, just questions about the verification process, whether that's, how do I sign up with login.gov? What do I have to do to get through this process? Questions related to the residency kind of eligibility criteria, so on and so forth. Next category are kind of issues with request, and those are typically questions about what identifiers to enter or questions about the process itself. Lastly is your kind of catch-all other category, and we typically see questions in there like, how do I sign up, sign me up, drop my data, so on and so forth. I will say at launch, we had assumptions about the sorts of issues consumers might ask. We were prepared with templates and responses, and kind of the high volume we've seen since launch has really given us the opportunity to expand the surface area of those questions and templates and really develop more responses, more workflows, so we're ready to respond as consumers kind of come in with scenarios that we may not have anticipated getting in just 8 weeks of launch. Since January, we've been able to kind of clear queue, catch up on tickets, and we're now in the process of kind of taking all this raw information we've received since launch to build out workflows and SLAs that we can use going forward. In terms of staffing, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who was able to kind of help respond to this high volume of tickets and requests. We did kind of pull in folks across various teams to help. I think at our peak, we probably had about 8 people in our inbox responding. So it's been really helpful. I appreciate that. And also want to emphasize again that, giving more folks in the agency access to hearing what consumers are saying and hearing it direct in their words, I think is really valuable and will help us all kind of center consumers as we evolve the platform. So before we move on, I'll just cover a couple of notes about data broker registration. First, we mentioned over 570 data brokers have completed registration via Drop. Again, this was the first time data brokers were doing it within the Drop system itself. And so now data brokers have kind of a hub. They have an account, they can complete registration. They'll be able to use Drop to complete the integration and deletion request processing come August. We did respond to about 100 inquiries about the registration process from data brokers, and this is pretty consistent in terms of volume with data broker inquiries in previous years. In general, the transition from our form registration process to Drop was pretty seamless, and we now have a process for that going forward. Next slide. This is an overview just situating kind of where we are in the timeline, probably a familiar slide to many, but I wanted to take a moment to kind of situate us with the upcoming August 1st deadline for request processing as we look ahead at what's coming next. Next slide, please. So, we're really excited. It's been an incredible couple of months. Our work is not done. We have more to do. Next up is one kind of publication of the data broker registry on our website, which we expect to do in March. Next is kind of publishing API documentation and developing a data broker sandbox for data brokers. So we want to make sure data brokers have what they need to integrate with Drop to begin processing the hundreds of thousands of requests that are already in, And so there's a lot of work that we'll have to kind of put together to make sure that's a seamless transition, and that work has already begun. And lastly, we'll continue to kind of enhance the platform as time goes on. As I think most of us who've worked on platforms like this know, the work is never done. There's always more to do to really prepare for continued scale. I think that about wraps it up for the product update, but I'll pass it now to Ms. White to talk a little bit about communication efforts related to Drop.
Testing my microphone. Okay. I'm a shorty, so this is just a hair. There we go. If we can. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm pleased to provide an update on Drop communication efforts and also a look ahead at what's to come. As you may remember from presentations last year, our communication plan was to do light drop outreach in early 2026 and then ramp up outreach efforts in the spring. The primary reason was because deletions for this first year don't start until the summer and fall, and we also wanted to give the development team time to identify any issues before launching a large-scale outreach effort. However, organic interest in Drop resulted in inbound media inquiries and early publicity. We had many reporters from print and TV stations ask for interviews, so we quickly pivoted to be responsive to media requests. To date, we've done a number of interviews with numerous media outlets, including the Washington Post, NBC Bay Area, KTLA, which is the LA station, the NBC LA station, and SF Gate. More than 100 media outlets have covered Drop. In addition to the outlets we've done interviews with, we've received coverage from additional outlets, including CNN, the LA Times, NBC, CBS, ABC stations throughout the state, including in the Bay Area, LA, Palm Springs, San Diego, the Central Valley, and Sacramento. In addition, we've been covered on NPR stations and regional newspapers. Mr. Kemp has done a number of privacy-centered podcasts as well, including The Privacy Advisor, a podcast by IAPP. Pivoting to social media, in addition to earned media, we gained a lot of traction on social media. Information about Drop was shared by individuals on various platforms. Some of these individuals have a large number of followers. For example, a post on Instagram explaining Drop was viewed more than 2.7 million times, and that video was shared more than 10,000 times. This is important not just because of the reach of these posts, but also because of the audiences they reach. Well, there is certainly an overlap, generally speaking, in the demographics that watch evening news broadcast TV and those that get their information on social media. Generally speaking, we consider these two different audiences. So it's been lovely that we could reach those who are more traditional media focused and then those who get their news from social media. The fact that this managed to get such strong coverage on both speaks to the interest of Drop and also the outstanding development team in creating this easy to use platform that was operational from day one, minute one, really. Pivoting to press releases and promotion. Shortly after the launch, the governor's office let us know that they would like to put out a press release about Drop. We deeply appreciate the governor's partnership in this effort and are grateful for the press release that they issued on January 20th. Shortly after, in celebration of Data Privacy Week, we put out our own press release on Drop. In addition, Mr. Kemp and Senator Becker did a video about Drop, along with sharing additional privacy tips for Californians. Both Cal Privacy and the Senator's office shared this video during Data Privacy Week. In addition to this video, we promoted Drop on our social media channels and in different ways, including infographics and videos. Our outreach team has also folded in how to use Drop into those senior Scam Stopper events and the numerous community town halls we've been part of that are put on by elected officials. We've also given presentations about Drop at privacy conferences, including the recent California Lawyers Association Privacy Summit this month. Looking ahead, we're just getting started in terms of outreach efforts. Next month, we are co-hosting a press conference on Drop with Senator Becker's office at the Capitol. We've also launched our paid media campaign. Paid search went live on January 1, and less than 2 weeks ago, our paid social media ads went live. I'm excited to share the social media ads with you now if you haven't seen them yet in the wild. So you could bring those up. it's just a visual. So, okay, perfect. So the name of our campaign is called The Gatherers, and it features different animals that call California home. The three examples you see here are a raccoon, seagulls, and a squirrel. Since many people aren't familiar with the term data brokers, we used a creative and engaging tone to these ads to help explain that data brokers gather up your data. In March, we'll expand this campaign to additional channels. Drop radio ads in English and Spanish will begin running, as will print ads in numerous languages. We'll also have out-of-home advertising, including billboards, airports, and on bus tails. Banners and informational materials will be available in neighborhood businesses, including at convenience stores, drugstores, laundromats, and more. Our general education commercials, which you probably all remember, those 30-second spots, those will run on TV. These ads will include a QR code that people can scan to bring them directly to privacy.ca.gov/drop to make sign up even easier. We will also have booths at numerous community events throughout the state to raise awareness about the agency and encourage people to sign up for DROP. Some examples include farmers markets, community fairs, family-centric events, and university events. We will also continue to present at community events, engage stakeholders, and continue to work with the media on outreach efforts. This fall, when deletions by data brokers begin, we are planning to host a delete week to encourage even more people to sign up. That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Ms. White, Mr. Andrusov, and Ms. Rosenblatt. I really do have that frog. It's persistent today. That was beyond impressive and exciting. So thank you very much for that. I'm actually going to ask my fellow board members if they have comments first. I do have a few things I'd like to say. Yes, Mr. Liebert.
The first one is wow. That's a really fantastic example of great work by any state government, and we can be so proud of that. I'm so proud of all of the folks who have been involved in this. Marissa, Art, Liz, Tiffany, Phil, I know you were a key team there in making this all happen, so thank you. That's the first thing. You must be exhausted, and there's still so much more to do, so I have lots of compassion for you. It's an interesting situation we're in because 250,000 is so impressive in this short period of time. And yet I asked my friend ChatGPT how many Californians are on the internet right now, and it was 35 million. And so if we want to get to like 10% of just the folks who I think want to be able to take advantage of protecting their privacy this way, we're looking at what, 3 million? We've got so much more to go and so much work to do in that. And so I want to thank you, Megan, for your description of the efforts that we're undertaking to get this out there for people to understand. I wanted to raise the idea, if you will, that we start using the tools of government in other ways that we've had to get the word out. So for example, when you go to renew voter registration, a lot of times there's information that government gives, and one of those could be about DROP. And likewise, I think when you go register your vehicle, re-register your vehicle at the DMV, that would be another mechanism to offer Californians the opportunity to protect their privacy this way. Things like that could be really helpful. And obviously, we need a really robust budget for getting the word out. So I was going to ask you, what is our budget if you could remind us that the amount of money we have to spend on paid advertising right now?
Absolutely. So right now we have 2.5 million left to spend on the DROP campaign. We need to exhaust those funds by June.
By June, okay. And is that, in your judgment, Megan, is that pretty substantial for the costs involved for getting the word out this way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased with the funds. We are not really pushing our paid campaign until March, you know, so it's coming up next week. So it's going to be or next month. So it's going to be, which is next week. So it's going to be a very strong push from March until June.
And then the last thing I'd like to mention about this really, if I can remember, is on the issue of data broker fees. it seems to me, I know in other aspects of government, when we have programs, fees will also take into account voter education, for example, and other forms of education and outreach. And right now, I know our fees are relatively small, which is great, but the need is so great as well. So I think at some point, I'd like to just alert the board, if you will, that there should be some discussion about the fee levels. And then even to get a little bit more nuanced about that, would be a discussion about a graduation of those fees, a graduated approach, if you will. Obviously, smaller companies that are doing data broker work don't have the same resources that a lot of the really huge data broker companies do have. So having some graduated approach to that issue, I think, should be part of a conversation at some point. But mainly, we need the budget, obviously, to get the word out for the real opportunity for all Californians to know about DROP and use it if they choose to. So thank you for all the great work that you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. Anything further from the staff in response to that?
I just know data broker fees are coming up later this year as a conversation.
Good morning. Yes, as previously discussed, we do anticipate bringing the data broker registration fees to the board annually. So previously they were $6,600. We reevaluated the cost of the program. We were able to bring that down to $6,000 this year. But now we're also seeing an increase in registrants and then a huge uptick by California consumers. So in the coming months, we will come back to the board with the total cost of the program and what we will need to set the fees at.
And if I could follow up on that?
Sure.
That would, just with the question on the budget side, I know that very intricate and complicated, okay, the complicated process of budget increases, et cetera. With all the work that's getting done, I assume that, and all of those inquiries that are coming in from consumers and just this massive amount of work, at some point it'd be great to know, do we need more budget to accommodate this success?
That's another great question. So for the board's awareness, we did submit an item 9840 request for the current year to cover the cost of verification. So that is currently under review with the legislature. If approved, the clock ends this Sunday, actually. That would free up another $700,000 for us to use for identity verifications. And then again, we're only not even 2 months in to the launch of the program. So continuing to evaluate long-term resources, and we would bring that back to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Liebert, okay. Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And if I seemed a little as though I was paying very close attention, it's just so that we stay within the agenda item. Yep. So we will have an opportunity to discuss some of these important issues when we pick up those budgetary points later in the year. Mr. McTaggart?
Thank you. A couple of just technical questions. On the page, so when we were here, I went to check my drop status. I'm just thinking, because it shows, it shows to the consumer, 0 out of 577, all the way down, right? So you think, it did this 3 weeks ago, what's going on? And the consumer might not be aware of the delay. So I think on that page, having something saying, hey, this isn't happened yet, it's going to, don't worry, don't despair, because you might, we get 250,000 people doing this and they're like, well, what's going on here? So I think just we need to be, selling all the time. So I think that's one thing. And then my other tiny little technical thing is on this might be a user error, probably is, on the help thing, because I actually, when I did it first, I just reminded myself, I have to go do my TV, and I didn't do my TV. Is it super easy to add a piece of information? And I just didn't see that on the sort of the frequently, it's not really a frequently asked questions, but it's the help page. There might be a thing saying, you can go back and add a piece of information. That those two things are my sum total of my my questions here.
Thank you so much. So to the first point, we do have messaging about the August kind of timeline, but noted that it's really important to emphasize so consumers are aware of all of the timelines associated with request processing. On the second piece,
On the first one, it's not on this page, not on the drop status page.
it's not on the drop status page. Yeah, if you log fully in, which is what you would need to do to add future identifiers, you should be able to kind of see when you hit submit a timeline at the very bottom. But yes, to that second point about adding identifiers, you'll want to sign in again either via login.gov or personal information, whichever one you used first. And then once done, you can add additional, you can add your TV ID or anything else that way.
So my only two thing would be saying, because we've gone to the trouble of sending people their own drop ID, which allows you to bypass the login and just check on your status, we should have it on that page. And then we should just, on the frequently asked questions, just say, here's how you do X. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart. I've said many times how impressed I am with this effort, so I won't belabor it, but I wanted to pull out just a few things. First of all, with my status as, I don't know, a gnarly, what's the word? Hoary, like longstanding board member, I have had the opportunity to see, at least from the board's vantage point, this develop from the very beginning. And this moment when DROP has launched and has been, by every metric I think we can think of, highly successful for consumers signing up, is a good moment, I think, to pause and to say just a little bit about what has gone into this moment and how proud I know we all are of all of you and the work you're doing on behalf of Californians. So it, of course, started with the DELETE Act, and I'm very grateful to Senator Becker and his staff and our Deputy Director of Legislation, Ms. Mahoney, and all the work and vision that went into that, and especially also highlight Mr. Kemp's work on that. It was, I don't want to overstate, but I think it was a cause of yours and something that you put a lot of energy into. When it passed and the agency was just getting started and had a new act to implement and had, I don't know, about 5 people, there was a great enthusiasm for this. As Mr. McTaggart said, the timelines were very tight. And people just jumped to and really became creative and pitched in. So I'd like to thank the sort of trajectory of people. The risk of this is that I will, without question, miss somebody. And to you, I deeply apologize. It is not intentional. With our first executive director, Ashkan Soltani, who I think brought his technical sort of understanding and his legendary energy to the task, working with Ms. Allen, who sadly is not here today, but we know she's the plotty for 2026, and we've talked a little bit about how they pitched in. I really appreciate Ms. Rosenblatt recognizing the CDT team. Jonathan Porat and his team, I know, have just been indispensable to this effort. Ms. Tiffany Garcia, as ever, figuring out the budget and how everything is going to work, and managing and developing the relationships with CDT. Ms. White, who I think has been, and her team, her whole team, have been thinking about and developing this really thoughtful approach and campaign, and then we're able to shift on a dime when things didn't go as expected, in order to make sure the public is aware of this process. And then, of course, we were so delighted to welcome Ms. Rosenblatt to be the coordinator of the ship, and I think your presentation really shows how thoughtful all of this has been. Mr. Andrusov, I know also we brought you on, when was it? November or September? Sometime last year. April. Okay, time flies. And you just got thrown in. And I'm just incredibly grateful for all of the expertise that you've brought to this. I also want to highlight the legal division's work, because the legal division, the regulations, of course, are very necessary. On top of that, there's a world in which it wouldn't really be the legal division's task to do some of the work that they have done, and that they have done beautifully, skillfully, and with an eye always towards Californians, as Ms. Rosenblatt so rightly highlighted, as they always do. So thank you to them. I'd like to thank Andy Clausen, who's an analyst, who pitched in and I think provided tremendous support. And I mentioned Ms. Chidambira earlier, and some of the wonderful work that they have done. I would just like to remind those of you outside of the meeting who know this, and those of you who don't know, is that the contracts are the key thing. The contracts are key, and they are not simple to find counterparties for, and they're not simple to instate, and she makes it look easy, she and her team. So at a minimum, all of these pieces of the agency and all of these amazing people who shepherd those pieces have been working together to bring this service to Californians. And again, I know I have missed someone. I know everyone's been pitching in. The reason why the system has been successful, despite the unexpected enthusiasm in the early days of January, is because the team did a beautiful job planning, a job of building that really took into account the consumer and really thought through what the consumer's experience would be and really tested it. And then the team was able to adjust in every way, including requesting additional budget because we need more signups, which is a wonderful problem to have, but it's a problem that a lot of organizations would stumble on. But because we have the extraordinary team that we have, our organization has not stumbled, and we have been able to launch this incredible service for Californians in a way that is, I think, quite seamless for them, as we have heard. So I think that we are all just extraordinarily proud of you, and looking forward to what the agency can do through this system to help Californians protect their privacy. Yes, Mr. McTaggart.
Yeah, thanks. I realize I should also mention a couple of people. I mean, first and foremost, I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to Senator Becker for championing this through the legislature. It was his courage that got us here. But also, you know, I think he would admit that without Tom Kemp coming to him with the idea and helping co-author it along with Privacy Rights Clearinghouse, it would not have come into law. So that, you know, we definitely have a debt of gratitude to the co-author sitting right here. It was a tremendous achievement for what's happened in California. So thank you. Thank you, Senator Becker, Emery, Megan, wherever you are out there, if you're listening, Privacy Rights Clearinghouse, thank you also for this.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart, and thank you for mentioning Privacy Rights Clearinghouse as well. It's just incredibly exciting to be the state that's at the forefront of being able to do this for our own people and hopefully serving as a model. So love the bold vision. Mr. Kemp's energy in chasing a vision and just making it happen is unparalleled. So thanks to everybody. With that, if there are no more board comments, does the team have any questions further for us, or you probably wouldn't want to ask us. We will let you go on your expert way. And with that, I will ask if there's any public comment.
This is for agenda item number 4, delete request and opt-out platform update. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. This is for agenda item number 4. Okay, Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Carwile. Thank you, everyone. I have one final thing to say, which is on a somewhat more serious note. This is correctly a celebratory moment. It is also a moment in which your efforts are especially important. In light of federal government activities to buy, use, combine, use Americans' data for purposes that without question harm them, including using their information to deport residents of many states, not only California, using them to prosecute those who are in disagreement with people who have powerful roles. The role of data brokers, witting or unwitting, in buying and selling data is especially important today, and giving people the ability to make their own choices about whether or not their data is going into that system is especially important. This is one board member's view, and I am not pushing it on the agency, but I do think that this is a moment that is crucially important. It's not a partisan political issue. It is an issue with regards to the rights of people as against their government. And though we regulate companies, we do not regulate government agencies. The information flows are not so clear, and they are not so clearly delineated. So this kind of work is crucially important for our democratic system. So thank you. With that, do we need a break? Okay, let's take a break and come back at 10:45 a.m. Congratulations and thank you, DROP team. Thank you, Ms. Carwile. We will now return from break and resume this meeting of the California Privacy Protection Agency Board with agenda item number 5, which is our annual administrative and budget update. This will be presented by our Deputy Director of Administration, Ms. Vaughn Chidambira, and I will ask her to please go ahead and for everyone to turn their attention to the materials for this presentation, for this agenda item.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Urban and members of the board. I will be presenting the administration and budget update, and joining me is Ms. Garcia to assist with any questions that may come up. Starting with human resources. Since our last update, the agency has continued to grow as we fill vacant positions. I'm pleased to report that our hiring strategy of bringing in the division head, followed by their team members, has been effective. With the Chief Privacy Auditor now in place, the recruitment efforts for the technologists who will be filling in our audit division is underway, marking continued progress in building capacity to meet the agency's workload. Next slide. On the screen is a high-level snapshot of the agency's workforce. The agency, as of fiscal year 25-26, has 53 authorized positions. 48 of those are currently filled by full-time civil service positions, and the rest are filled by temporary positions such as interns and retired annuitants, bringing that number to 52 as of December 2025. We have continued to leverage interns as part of our strategic pipeline for talent. We currently have interns in administration, public affairs, enforcement, and the legal division. Internships have provided valuable experience for emerging professionals, while also preparing potential candidates to compete for future permanent positions with the state through the formal hiring process. This approach has proven effective in recruitment efforts and ensuring that positions, when they become available, we have qualified candidates who are able to contribute immediately. Building on our workforce development strategy, the next slides will provide a demographic snapshot of our staff. Starting with the gender demographic report, it shows the gender demographics based on the data with CalHR, comparing our agency to the statewide workforce demographics. As in prior years, This distribution has remained consistent for the agency. We have higher female representation at about 60% compared to 46% statewide, and male representation is at 40% compared to 54% statewide. Moving on to the ethnic composition, it closely aligns with the statewide demographics with a few differences. The agency has higher proportion of employees identifying as multiracial at 23% compared to 13% statewide, and higher representation of white employees only. Conversely, our Hispanic and Latino representation is significantly lower at 9% compared to 26% statewide. And here is the number of employees we have by location, and this is more recent based on February data. In Sacramento, we have 30 employees, 14 in San Francisco, and 12 in LA. Having reviewed our hiring profile, I'll now move on to the budget update. For this update, I'll cover the current year update as well as the coming fiscal year. Starting with the current year, which spans from July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. For fiscal year 25-26, the agency's total budget is $15.9 million, and it's comprised by 3 funds. The general fund at about $12.4 million, which is about 78% of the agency's total budget. The data broker fund at $3 million, approximately 19%, and the consumer privacy fund at $400,000. Each fund operates independently, and resources from one fund cannot be moved to support expenditures in another fund. I'll now speak about the general fund in a little bit more detail. So salaries and benefits make up the majority of the expenses for the general fund at $10 million. Facilities and department services, including contracted administrative services, comes up to $1.7 million. And then operating expenses and equipment are at $549,000. This includes general expenses, training, and travel, etc. The Data Broker Fund supports 4 authorized positions. And for fiscal year 25-26, the Data Broker Fund budget was for $3 million, comprised of salaries and benefits at $700,000. Drop contracts made up the majority at $2.2 million, and operating expenses and equipment were at $116,000. Due to high demand of deletion requests, additional funding was needed to support ID verifications. As Ms. Garcia mentioned earlier, the agency submitted a request for $700,000 for additional verifications in January. And this request, we will find out whether we'll get the funding in the coming days, by Sunday. And we'll move on to the Consumer Privacy Fund. For the current fiscal year, there are no authorized positions in the Consumer Privacy Fund. The funding available was for technologist expert services, contracts in general to support the enforcement division, as well as equipment and service agreements, which is providing tools to assist with the enforcement division as well. For the upcoming fiscal year, 26-27, we submitted 2 budget proposals, and these are subject to legislative review and approval. The first BCP was for procurement support and is requesting $178,000 from the general fund and 1 position in fiscal year 26-27 and $164,000 ongoing. And this position will help support the workload in contracts and procurement as well as business operations. The second BCP was for enforcement resources. At the last admin presentation, the board emphasized the need to strengthen enforcement resources. In response, we conducted a focused assessment to identify near-term needs and submitted a BCP to support additional enforcement capacity. The BCP includes 6 positions comprised of 5 attorneys and 1 analyst. In 26-27, we are requesting 1.6 million, of which just over 500,000 will be from the Data Broker Registry Fund and 1 million from the Consumer Privacy Fund. And the following year, for 26-27, we are requesting 1.5 million, with 500,000 from the Data Broker Registry Fund and about $1 million from the Consumer Privacy Fund. We expect to have a total of 61 positions among the 3 funds in fiscal year 26-27. The General Fund, we have 51 positions. The Data Broker Registry Fund, 7 positions, and the Consumer Privacy Fund will have 4 positions. The total budget will be 17.5 million. Generally speaking, the General Fund will continue to be the biggest funding source for the agency at 72%. The Data Broker Fund will be consistent in prior years at about 20%, and the Consumer Privacy Fund is seeing an increase from the 400,000 to 1.3, and their budget will be 8% of the total budget for the agency. That concludes the admin update, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chidambira. Comments or questions from the board? Yes, Mr. McTaggart.
I'm getting a little lost on the Consumer Privacy Fund. Can you help me understand that? I thought that was the money in 160 that comes from the fund, come from the fines. So can you? And I thought that it could only go to certain areas, but it seems like we're spending it ourselves for enforcement. Is that right or not? No.
No, we're spending it on CCPA enforcement. So.
Good morning still. So yes, the initiative did specified uses, and at least how it was initially structured, it was one pot with us and DOJ and then the grant program. Last year we proposed Trailer Bill to revise that so that we had separate allocations for us versus DOJ. So their settlements will go into their own subfund. Ours will go into a subfund, and then we also created a subfund for grants. And for every settlement, either a civil fine from DOJ or an administrative fine, the initial 5% or 5% of that amount will go directly into the grant program subfund. And then the agency would not run that program until it exceeded 300,000. But again, the initiative, so that's like high level where the structure stands today. But yes, the initiative did set out that the agency is able to use the fund to enforce the title as a whole. So we have prioritized enforcement based on feedback from the board. And then the 2 pieces the Deputy Director mentioned was one last year. We had a proposal for enforcement, but again, the one-time revenues that we saw to date, we decided to prioritize contract resources because of the volatility with ongoing resources and staffing. That would just be a liability for us. And so then that was last year, but given the volume of settlements we've been able to receive to date, thank you, Deputy Director Macko, we are comfortable at this stage going forward with additional enforcement staffing.
Got it. So 160 was amended last year?
Yes.
I was looking at the original text, thanks.
Yes.
There were 2 trailer bills, or maybe they were combined into one, but one was the allocation of the fund and the other was the $300,000 before spending the grants or before issuing grants from the grant fund.
Correct.
I just have a comment on that, which is exciting to see it develop. That was one of the things that I thought was impressive about the initiative was that it had this capacity built within it so that enforcement would help support enforcement of the law. So I think it's a positive development to see that happening. I had a quick question about the drop contracts. I was just wondering, is that contracts with CDT to help build the system and the identity verification contracts?
We have a number of contracts. So we currently have an interagency agreement with CDT,
Mhm.
and then we have an external contractor helping on the development of the system, and then separate contracts for identity verification. So yes, admin is very busy with contracts.
Okay, thank you. Yes, well, the salary number just reminded me again how impressive an operation it is and how lean. So, other comments or questions from the board? Thank you very much, Ms. Chidambira. This all makes a lot of sense and we appreciate it. For our newer board members who may not have been here last year, when we have our August meeting, we will discuss priorities for the next fiscal year, which is decided in the governor's budget in the fall. And with that, I'll ask for public comment.
This is for agenda item number 5, annual administrative and budget updates. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. This is for agenda item number 5. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Carwile. With that, we will move to agenda item number 6, which is a legislation update. Legislation is very active. Ms. Mahoney, I feel as though you find yourself needing to update us in every board meeting. We are always delighted to have you. So this item will be presented by our Deputy Director of Policy and Legislation, Ms. Maureen Mahoney. I'll ask everyone to turn their attention to the materials for this item. There is a slide presentation. I expect, or I wouldn't be surprised if things had developed a bit since then, since the legislatures are actively in session now. And whenever you're ready, please go ahead, Ms. Mahoney.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I have the most problems with this microphone. Is it coming through?
There is no most. There's only Mr. Kemp who's a genius with it.
Okay, well, keep me posted if you're having trouble hearing me. But thank you, Chair, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on legislative work. Thank you also to my team members, Jamila Deblack and Elliot Sangara, for their work in so many areas, but particularly to keep me up on all these bills that I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to start with an update on California legislation, and I'm going to begin with a little background on where we are in the legislative session. So we are in the second year of a 2-year session. That means that a number of bills have carried over from last year. And as the chair alluded to, last Friday, February 20th, was the deadline for bill introductions in California. So we do have a better idea of the universe of bills that are out there. But as you know, legislators can introduce placeholder bills. And so they have a bit more time to amend in the substantive language next month. And about a third of the bills introduced this year are placeholder bills, approximately 600 out of 1,800. So bills will begin making their way through the Chamber of Origin. We can expect committee meetings, policy committee meetings mid-March through April. The deadline to pass the Chamber of Origin is May 29th. The legislative session ends August 30th, and the governor will have until the end of September to take action on bills. And regarding engagement, I wanted to note that we've been continuing to engage with the legislature in a variety of ways, as the executive director mentioned, including through member-level meetings with the executive director. Ms. White's team is taking the lead on in-district presentations on privacy education, tips to protect privacy. Ms. Rosenblatt has also provided one-on-one support for offices that need assistance in signing up for DROP. And she's also going to join us in Sacramento for our annual legislative staff briefing to demo the DROP system for legislative staff and provide any additional necessary one-on-one support. We've received a lot of positive feedback and interest in DROP from the legislature. So really appreciate the DROP teams and the public affairs teams' work to make sure that the legislature has the support they need. So turning to bill matters, If you'll recall, staff presented 3 bill proposals to the board in November, and the board voted to direct staff to pursue the proposals with the California legislature for the upcoming session and allow staff flexibility to support the proposals up through the sponsorship capacity. So I'm pleased to share that Cal Privacy is sponsoring SB 923 from Senator Becker, the Expanding Privacy Rights Act. And this bill incorporates 2 of the bill proposals that the board approved last year. The bill expands the CCPA's right to delete to allow consumers to request to delete all personal information related to them held by a business, regardless of the source of that information. So currently, the CCPA allows consumers the right to request deletion of information collected from them. Additionally, the bill requires online-only businesses to provide an online method to submit privacy requests, such as a web form. Currently, online-only businesses are only required to provide an email address. So taken together, these changes will make the rights granted under the CCPA more meaningful and accessible. I'm also pleased to announce that Assemblymember Schiavo has introduced AB 2021, known as the Whistleblower Protection and Privacy Act, also sponsored by Cal Privacy. They would add comprehensive whistleblower protections to the CCPA and includes the following concepts which were discussed at the last meeting. First, an awards program to incentivize whistleblowers to come forward with information by allowing them to share in the proceeds of an administrative fine. And second, anti-retaliation provisions that protect a whistleblower from employer retaliation after they come forward, with a focus on strong confidentiality provisions. So we look forward to working with both of these authors as the bills move through the legislature. And I'll pause briefly in case there are any questions from the board.
Thank you. Questions from the board? I can't see Ms. Hamer's box well enough to know if she has her hand up. Nope. Okay, she's saying no. Thank you. I'm sorry about that, Ms. Hamer. All right, please go ahead, Ms. Mahoney.
Okay, next slide.
Well, actually, I don't have a question. I have a comment. I am a law professor after all. And I just wanted to thank Senator Becker and Assemblymember Schiavo for sponsoring these really important bills.
Next slide, please. So zooming out from the bills that Cal Privacy is sponsoring, we've also been monitoring new bills as they're filed to identify legislation that we'll track this year. And we are still sorting through all the bills. Our team typically tracks all bills that relate to the processing of personal information or that impact state agencies. And of course, encourage the board to flag any particular bills to track at any time. When appropriate, for example, if there are potential questions about how the bill intersects with the CCPA or the DELETE Act, or if we're asked, we provide technical assistance on these bills to foster consistency. From the broad list of bills that we track, we identify bills that the agency may want to take a position on, and we will bring this list of bills to the board typically during the May meeting. And we flag bills for position if they meaningfully affect us, which can happen in a few ways, either amending the CCPA or the DELETE Act, tasking us with new responsibilities, or if they introduce or amend laws that affect all state agencies, like the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act or the Administrative Procedure Act. So again, we're tracking a lot of bills this session. As a caveat, as the chairperson alluded to, 1,000 bills were introduced between the time I submitted my slides and this board meeting, and a number of bills worth mentioning. We're not including the slides, such as AB 2561 from Assemblymember Valencia that would amend the Business and Professions Code to require operating systems and applications to default to privacy settings that are most protective, among others. But I wanted to flag a few bills that are already moving in the legislature, give you a sense of what we're seeing. These bills don't all impact us, so not all of these bills will probably be recommended for board position in May. But give you a sense of what we're looking at. So first is AB 883 from Assemblymember Lowenthal. This amends the DELETE Act to increase protections establish streamlined processing of deletion requests for elected officials and judges. A key component is the 5-day turnaround time for processing these deletion requests. This bill is very similar to AB 302 from Assemblymember Bauer Cahan that we brought to your attention last year, and the members are coordinating their efforts. So as a reminder, at the board's direction, Cal Privacy took a supportive amended position on AB 302 last year. If amended, because the bill tasks the agency with creating and maintaining a list of elected officials, something that we weren't in the best position to do. Also, the timeline established by the bill was not sufficient to modify the drop system to meet the bill's requirements. So AB 883, again, very similar to 302, but instead of tasking us with developing this and maintaining this list of elected officials, it tasks the Secretary of State with doing so, which is a more kind of intuitive approach. But it still maintains a timeline that's not in statute feasible based on the new functionalities that would need to be built into DROP. So the bill requirements kick in January 1st, 2027. So this bill has been amended in full twice already this year, and we anticipate that additional amendments may be coming. So we're going to continue to work with the author.
I think it's up to Ms. Mahoney. Would you like to go through them all or take questions as you go?
I think as I go.
Okay, Mr. Liebert, I think, has a question on 883.
Yeah, the author's fantastic. I'm just wondering what the theory on this one is, because I know under the Delete Act, there's only so much we can do in terms of speed, et cetera, and the systems that we have. So what is the approach of this currently in its latest amended form?
So in the current amendment form, it's, again, very similar to 302. It tasks the Secretary of State with bringing to us a list of elected officials and the Judicial Council with a list of judges. We would have to check with the elected officials and make sure that they still want to be on this list. And then we would be tasked with submitting this to DROP and then processing the requests within 5 days.
So the key there is having the agency take on a responsibility to handle the drop process rather than the judges or the elected officials
Themselves, yeah.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
So next I wanted to highlight AB 1159 from Assemblymember Addis. At a high level, this amends student privacy laws, such as the K through 12 People Online Personal Information Protection Act, more commonly known as COPIPA, to prohibit, and other laws, to prohibit the use of cover data to train AI systems. So we'll continue monitoring that, although it does not task us with any responsibilities. Next up is AB 1542 from Assemblymember Ward. This one would affect our agency. It amends the CCPA to restrict the sale and sharing of sensitive personal information. So this would meaningfully strengthen protections for SPI and limit the further downstream distribution of this data. So we'll keep monitoring this one. And then we have two bills authored by Senator Cabaldon. The first SB 1104 would amend the CCPA to require that businesses that don't exclusively operate online to provide a toll-free number and email address for submitting privacy requests, like right to access, delete, and correct personal information. And then second, SB 1106 would amend the Delete Act to adjust the timelines for processing deletion requests from 45 days to 30. But I expect to see these bills change, and that these are just early versions. And then finally, I wanted to provide an update on a ballot initiative that I mentioned last year. So last fall, both OpenAI and Common Sense Media filed separate ballot initiatives to regulate companion.
Sorry, before we get to the initiative, I think Mr. Liebert has a question.
Thank you. Yet another question. Sorry. We have a couple of Delete Act bills going through based on your list, and it strikes me that at some point might be an opportunity, if you will, to address the possibility, if staff can think about this, of speaking, for example, with the chair of the Senate Privacy Committee, with his bills, for example, about graduated fees in terms of DROP, that we can protect the smaller businesses that shouldn't be paying the same amount of fees, if you will, as super large data brokers. It's worthy of discussion. I'd urge staff to have those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. Great. Yeah. And I just want to provide a brief update on this ballot initiative. Last fall, OpenAI and Common Sense Media filed separate ballot initiatives regulating companion chatbots aimed at children. Earlier this year, since our last board meeting, they agreed to a joint proposal and combine their efforts into one initiative. And then a couple weeks ago, they decided to put that joint ballot initiative on hold while they pursue a joint legislative effort, although reserving the option to pursue the joint ballot initiative in 2028. So we're monitoring this because it would have amended the Business and Professions Code to prohibit covered AI systems from serving targeted ads to children under 18 and prohibit the sale or sharing of a child under 18's data without parental consent. And there are also a number of bills that carried over last year that, if they move forward, will likely be taken up this summer, which I plan to discuss further at our May board meeting. So again, I expect we'll have a number of bills to recommend to the board to take a position on in May.
Thank you, Ms. Mahoney. I'm just going to break in for 1 second, again, for the benefit of our new board member, that in May or thereabouts, Ms. Mahoney generally comes to us with more information and recommendations for any positions that the board should take.
Okay, so that wraps up California. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, just a brief multi-state update. We monitor states that are considering privacy and ADMT legislation as part of our mandate to work with other states to encourage consistency where possible. So it's still relatively early in the 2026 legislative session for some states, although other states have already wrapped up. But I wanted to give you a sense of what we're seeing around the country. First, we are seeing a trend of bills that attempt to regulate data brokers. At least 10 states are or have considered data broker bills this year, including over a half dozen states that have considered Delete Act style bills. So again, the ones that are like the that are based on the Delete Act are very, very similar to it. States that have Delete style bills include Hawaii, Illinois, Nebraska, New Mexico, New York, Vermont. Connecticut was just introduced, and I expect more to come. And we've engaged with legislators in several states to offer technical assistance and feedback to promote consistency, including oral testimony in Vermont and Maryland, which has a data broker registry bill, focused on our experiences in implementing the Delete Act. And there are several comprehensive privacy bills moving around the country. Some of these are new bills. A lot of them are carried over from last year. For example, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Maine, Massachusetts, and Wisconsin. The Pennsylvania bill, for example, passes the House in 2025, is now making its way through the Senate. Similarly, Oklahoma's bill is even close to the finish line. I think it's just awaiting a concurrence vote in the Senate. It may have already happened. And the Maine bill, which is particularly strong, recently passed the House and now moves on to the Senate. So we'll continue to monitor those. And finally, I'm going to provide an update on what we're monitoring at the federal level. Increased federal interest in preemption remains our top focus this year. We're closely monitoring several bills that are moving through the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Committee markup of over a dozen bills focused on kids' online safety is expected any day now. Early versions of the majority of these bills had provisions that sought to limit states' ability to act. So we've been paying particular attention to the House version of COPA 2.0, which expands privacy protections of COPA 1.0, but also included a preemption provision that limited states' ability to enact laws, quote, related to the provision of the act. In December, when the subcommittee considered these bills, we submitted a letter to the whole committee in opposition to the preemption provision, encouraged them to consider amendments that would establish a floor and allow states to go further, consistent with the Senate's version of that bill. We've also heard that after the committee considers the slate of kids' bills, we may expect to see the introduction of a comprehensive federal privacy bill So this bill is the work product of the House E&C working group that I mentioned several times over the past year or so, and it was formed last year to develop a framework for a federal privacy law. So again, we submitted a comment last year to the working group urging them to establish privacy laws that set a floor. And we anticipate the expected privacy bill may seek to preempt the states. Additionally, we are monitoring the next steps expected from President Trump's December executive order on a national framework for AI. And that was released in early December. The order charged the Secretary of Commerce to publish an evaluation of state laws to identify laws that conflict with a policy in the order to, quote, enhance the United States global AI dominance through a minimally burdensome national framework, end quote, and laws that should be referred to the Department of Justice for legal challenge. Based on the timelines outlined in the executive order, we expect this evaluation to come next month, March. And we're preparing to review the evaluation once the list is released. I also want to note that the order includes other elements related to laws deemed inconsistent with the federal objectives. States with these laws may become ineligible for certain broadband equity access and deployment or BEAD funds. The Federal Communications Commission is directed to consider creating a national reporting and disclosure standard to override conflicting state laws. And the FTC is directed to issue a policy statement explaining the circumstances under which state laws that require alterations to the truthful output of AI models are preempted under the FTC Act's prohibition on deceptive acts and practices. The executive order also states that the administration will prepare legislative recommendations for a uniform federal privacy framework for AI that preempts state AI laws that conflict with the policy in the executive order. So there is discussion of potential AI regulation framework in Congress that would seek to establish a so-called national standard on AI, so we're monitoring that as well. And finally, several agency representatives are planning to visit Washington, D.C. in late March for the IAPP Global Privacy Summit. And several of us will use this opportunity to meet with members of Congress as appropriate to follow up on conversations the executive director and I had during our last DC trip and make new connections. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mahoney, and your team. Lean and impressive is the theme of the day, and I think generally the agency, but we are really grateful for the comprehensive information that you're able to provide for us and your stalwart support of the agency's views in these discussions. Comments or questions from board members on the rest of Ms. Mahoney's updates? Yes, Mr. McTaggart.
I just want to say thank you for all your efforts. It's really impressive watching the IAPP map of the country get greener and greener, and I know you guys are doing a tremendous amount of education and travel and appearing in different legislatures. How many legislatures have you testified in now? You must be.
Probably under a dozen, but.
Yeah, anyway, very impressive, and thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart. With that, I'll ask if there's public comment on this item.
Agenda item number 6. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. This is for agenda item number 6, legislation update. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Carwile. With that, we will move to agenda item number 7, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a rulemaking petition to amend existing regulations to incorporate frameworks for minimal functional mode and a tiered consent structure for general purpose consumer devices. This is a petition that we received under a part of the California Administrative Procedures Act that I think is not
very famous, but is very interesting. That is petitioning the agency actually to engage in rulemaking on these topics. And Mr. Laird will present this item, and I'll ask him to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Urban. Testing, this is working. Okay, good. Thank you. I think this is perhaps the longest I've gone in a board meeting without speaking to you all. For this agenda item, you have before you a petition for rulemaking and a brief memo that explains the procedural requirements associated with such a submission. And first, I'll note that the identifying information for the petitioner was redacted because the petitioner self-identified as a minor. As explained in the memo, the agency is required to grant or deny the petition, grant or deny part of a petition, grant other relief, or take any other action warranted by a petition within 30 calendar days. Since this petition was received on February 9th, a decision must be rendered no later than March 11th. The petitioner requests that the agency formally initiate rulemaking proceedings to achieve the following. 1, define and require the implementation of a minimal functional mode for general purpose consumer devices. 2, mandate a tiered consent structure for consumer device activation. 3, solicit public input through structured workshops or formal comment processes. 4, prohibit manufacturers from requiring consent to non-essential data practices to utilize core functions. And 5, mandate the core minimal functional mode as the default for minors' devices. Upon evaluation of the petition and the timelines embedded within the Administrative Procedures Act petition process, staff recommends that the board deny the petition. While the petition raises some very thoughtful and interesting concepts for consideration, it is not technically feasible for staff to prepare a notice package for the proposal and schedule a formal hearing by the March 11th deadline. This is affirmed, in fact, by the Office of Administrative Law themselves, who, in response to a rulemaking petition they themselves once received, stated, given the steps that must be taken before an agency can notice its proposed regulatory changes, the timeline required by Government Code Section 11340.7 is nearly impossible to comply with if an agency elects to accept the petition and make regulatory changes. So in this instance, the agency would have 13 days to prepare a notice, ISOR, text, and economic impact assessment. And if we determined a SRIA, standardized regulatory impact analysis, was required, which in this case, there's a decent likelihood that it would be, notice would simply not be possible for at least 90 days, given certain review requirements by the Department of Finance. In addition, and as I will touch on the next agenda item, the agency is already engaged in multiple topics for preliminary rulemaking. And so this also poses some challenges with constraints on existing resources. So with that all said, the legal division commends the thoughtfulness of the petition and is interested to hear if this is a topic the board would like staff to further evaluate as resources become available. But otherwise, our recommendation and our request to the board today would be to move and vote to deny the petition, and the legal division would carry out preparing that denial.
Thank you, Mr. Laird. And I want to especially thank the petitioner. The information on the petition is redacted. The petition is from a young person. And I think that I want to emphasize that this is a very impressive, thoughtful petition from anybody. And I'm especially impressed and appreciative of the level of sort of civic participation and thoughtfulness from a young person in California. So that is very much appreciated. I would like to sort of split the conversation between the process collision that we have encountered in the Administrative Procedures Act and anyone's substantive thoughts on the petition. So let's go ahead and take the second one first, just so we can discuss whether or not the board would like to think about some of the issues in the petition in some form. And then we can take up the process collision issue. My own view on that is that it looks impossible. So, and I hope that the petitioner sort of understands that this is an issue with the process. That is an issue with the process. Ms. Hamer?
So I didn't this might be a hybrid of what you just wanted to dissect, but I thought it was very well presented and thought out, and it was something that I would support substantively. Is there a way to incorporate it into our rulemaking or do something, and maybe even grant it subject to some changes in the administrative schedule? Or, I mean, how do we consider these, what I thought were very good thoughts that were raised by the petitioner?
Thank you, Ms. Hamer.
I'd respond by saying, first and foremost, a denial of the petition of itself is not a rejection of the concepts necessarily. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, certainly staff could, if directed by the board, take the time to further evaluate these concepts, including the legal authority of the agency to embark on sort of the concepts proposed, as well as sort of the rulemaking process we'd have to undergo to carry out such rulemaking. In terms of timing, I think it would just be a matter of, I understand we have other sort of items that we'll discuss in a little bit in process. My initial take was that this didn't fit sort of cleanly into any of the four topics we've discussed as a board at our last meeting of investigating, but it's certainly something we could either add to the list, turn to at a later time, or deprioritize one topic for another. So it's something we are open to and happy to explore and to provide further advice to the board on from the legal division.
Thank you. I am thinking, go ahead, please, Mr. McTaggart.
Well, like everybody else, if the petitioner happens to be watching or if they take the trouble to log back on, I'll just say this is incredibly impressive for someone who's not 18 yet. And so whether you got help with it or whatever, it's really impressive. And you know, my thought is it's an interesting time in anybody's life at that age. You know, life goes in different directions. And so if you want to pursue it, you should. I mean, obviously we're going to run into this procedural issue where we're not going to be able to do it because of the timing, but it kind of felt to me it's like it's a big enough architectural jump, and I'd love to hear from both Mr. Laird and Mr. Kemp on this. Almost feels like it's kind of quasi-delete act-esque in terms of it's another bolt-on for the CPPA, and you know, and so maybe it's its own bill. And I'm thinking if you're some 17-year-old, you're this passionate about it, you should be able to find a sponsor on something like this. It's a great idea. I mean, it's just a great idea, and we've all run into that problem when you're, you know, opening up something you want to make use, some consumer item. In my case, oftentimes it's a kid's device, and you can't do it without accessing the internet, which is annoying. So I think great job, keep it up. If the board feels like we want to add it to our list of things to do, great. I'm happy to do it. If it's something that comes along from the legislature independently, also great. But good job, whoever you are.
To comment specifically about potential legislation, there has been a bill introduced, AB 2561, that requires minimal privacy settings for devices. So one thing that the board should be aware of is that there could be a legislative train that happens that is and as of right now, it's separate from the CCPA statute. So one thing that you may want to consider is see what happens with that bill before having the agency do rulemaking in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Mr. McTaggart, quick follow-up, and then Mr. Lieber.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if with all of us around, we're trying to get people, young people interested, could some of us make an introduction somehow to that office, whoever's the author there, to whoever this person was? If the person wanted to get a hold of us, obviously there's privacy of the person, but if the person felt strongly enough and wanted to get a hold of us, presumably some of us would be able to walk them over to the office and say, here's this person who gave us this great thing. Would you guys like to work together somehow? It might be a really fun project for a 17-year-old. Great thing to show on your college app, that kind of thing.
Mr. Lieber?
Yes, I know, Phil, you're going to make a presentation about regulatory interest by the board. And I think there is some crossover here in terms of the whole concept of consent and notice. I've been somewhat robust in comments in the past about how so often our consent is not informed consent. It's actually compelled consent in order to use services, right? And so that would be something we can think about as well as we talk about the larger regulatory focus that we want to pursue. And this is a great way to generate that conversation as well.
Mr. Laird, I have a process thought, which is that I am hearing some general positive thoughts about the substance of, excuse me, I apologize, Ms. Carwile, for leaving the microphone. I will start over. I have a process thought for your advice, Mr. Laird, which is I've been hearing some positive feedback on the substance of the petition. Of course, there would be questions as to what would be within the agency's authority. There are questions as to what would be available resources, timeline, and all of that. This isn't all entirely separate from the impossible timelines that are in the Administrative Procedures Act. It seems as though we actually cannot do what Mr. McTaggart, I think, very properly suggested, which would be to try to move the timelines out a little bit in something. Was that not you? Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm misattributing. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hamer. All right. It was a great idea from another member of the board. I'm understanding that we can't necessarily do that. So that's just a question that we have to confront. Because the substance then and how it fits in or doesn't fit together with the 4 buckets that we had already identified for regulations and the prioritization of the topic vis-a-vis those 4 buckets that we've identified is scheduled to be discussed in the next agenda item. I propose that we actually move to the next agenda item and then we can recall this one in order to make a decision about whether to ask that the staff continue to explore this and on what timeline and prioritized in what way. Would that work? Would that be helpful?
That's fine with me.
Okay. All right. Is that all right with everybody? Okay, great. So with that, we will pause discussion on this agenda item with, again, our thanks to the petitioner. And we will move to agenda item number 8, which is a regulations update. As a reminder, in our November 7th meeting, the board discussed priorities for rulemaking. Several topics were chosen. At that time, Mr. Laird expected to present in this meeting with further detail on staff's recommended plan for preliminary activities related to those 4 topics, and indeed he will do so now. When you're ready, please, Mr. Laird, go ahead.
Thank you once again, Chair Urban. So yes, today I'd like to provide really just a brief update on our previous rulemaking that we accomplished last year, as well as our rulemaking yet to come. So next slide, please. To begin, I'll describe the efforts underway to better educate businesses about their forthcoming obligations via the regulations adopted last fall by the board. Coming into the new year, we knew that there were certain updates to the CCPA regulations going into effect on January 1st that may not have been obvious to all covered businesses. And so one thing we worked urgently on was a 7 Things to Know guide, which is screenshotted here on the slide deck, reminding folks of some of the most sort of significant changes to regulations in this, concerning the CCPA that were amended as part of the board's larger rulemaking package last year that businesses were expected to begin complying with on January 1st of this year. But regarding the net new requirements with regard to cybersecurity audits, risk assessments, and automated decision-making technology, we know there's a lot of information to broadcast. So we are also planning on releasing short-form overviews geared towards businesses and also more robust compliance checklists geared towards practitioners this spring and this summer. And so as is mentioned here, these are materials, educational guides, and resources that we are planning to make available through our website and promote both this spring and this summer. Again, our goal being to really better educate businesses and help practitioners assist those businesses into coming into compliance. And then finally, in the fall, we also do plan to start educating consumers about their new rights and options that will come online in 2027 with respect to ADMT. And so with in that regard, we understand beginning January 1st next year, consumers may start seeing new options about ADMT that is making significant decisions about them. And so arming consumers with knowledge about what these rights are, what they mean, and how they can use them, we think is an important step also. Let's see, next slide, please. So then turning to the topic that we were just discussing, as many of you will recall, but also for Ms. Osier's edification, in November, this board discussed and directed staff on a set of priorities for further rulemaking initiatives for this for the agency. And it circled around 4, but it's actually 5 topics, as I'll mention in a moment, that Ms. Kim presented on. So the first one being employee data. And so as was discussed in November, we have received a significant amount of feedback on issues related to employees and independent contractors and job applicants and how the CCPA applies to people within the work context. And that this was also a topic that the board has previously identified as needing further attention in our rulemaking. And so this was one area that you all agreed was something staff should focus on for further improvements and developments of these regulations in that context. The second subject was disclosures and notices. As we all know, CCPA requires various different disclosures to consumers, notice of collection, privacy policies, notices of financial incentives, et cetera. Questions we still encounter are, how can we make notices more effective? What are consumers most interested in knowing? Where do businesses need to help in making disclosures? And so again, understanding the need for further improvement in this area, the board also directed staff to further explore potential amendments for these provisions as well. The third category was reducing friction in the exercise of privacy rights. Again, as we're still a young agency, we do have continuous input from consumers through our complaint process and through other venues where we learn that there are still issues consumers are running into as they attempt to exercise their rights under the CCPA. And so again, this was a topic emphasized by the board of really having staff try to better understand where those friction points are and if there's anything we can do through rulemaking to alleviate that friction. Finally, we discussed and the board directed staff to review opt-out preference signal regulations to see if any changes or clarification need to be made considering the changing legal landscape. This was in part due to the fact that new legislation was introduced, including our own California Opt Me Out Act, as well as other bills signed last year having to do with minors data and signals related to minors as well. So with that said, those 4 areas were sort of the direction we were given to study coming out of the November meeting. There was one that we didn't discuss in detail last time, but is very much a necessity given our statutory timelines in the DELETE Act. And that is, if you may recall, there's a requirement in the DELETE Act that data brokers have to complete an audit of their compliance with the provisions of that law every 3 years, beginning in 2028. And so I know 2028 sounds like it's a long ways away. It is not, especially on a rulemaking timeline. And so we also intend to use a portion of our time and resources to begin that rulemaking process and come to this board with recommendations on that topic as well. Next slide, please. And so to briefly update you, ultimately, we've only started this work. This direction was received in November, and the legal division staff did turn to it immediately. And at this point, we're in information gathering and research mode on all full cylinders, though, I promise you, across our division. And we are consulting research, articles, and other data available publicly and also available throughout the agency. And as well as our standard practice, for preliminary rulemaking, we are next now planning to solicit public input through a preliminary public comment periods. These are four big, meaty topics we recognize, and we understand it's a lot to engage in our processes. So our strategy is we're going to do 2 topics at a time, and we anticipate next week, potentially in March, opening our first preliminary rulemaking comment period on employee data and notices and disclosures. We would follow it the next month then with an opportunity for comments on opt-out preference signals and reducing friction in exercising privacy rights. And then I also mentioned on these slides that we anticipate doing preliminary comments for our audit regulations for the DELETE Act that I just mentioned in summer. In further assessment and at the very, very thoughtful urging of my Assistant Chief Counsel, we may be bumping up that comment period to be closer to the spring, just understanding that work really needs to get underway as well. But with that said, that is really the next phase that we're embarking on, is really soliciting that open feedback from all stakeholders and from the public at large, and then synthesizing that and having that further help develop and inform where we might land on for recommendations. But in terms of timing, and I don't necessarily think we will be in a position to have clear recommendations on all 5 topics for you by the end of the year, but I definitely anticipate some of those will be ready for, again, recommendations or policy direction from you all by the fall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laird and the whole team for taking on these additional topics, which, well, we've already said we think they're important. I continue to think they're important. I have a question on the data broker audits that is really just a practical question. Do you yet have a sense of the proportional resources that process will take compared to the other processes? What I'm asking is, how close are you to capacity with rulemaking topics?
We're pretty full up at the moment. We've really tried to actually, as you're aware, early rulemaking for this agency was an all hands on deck effort, and it still is across these topics. Although I'll inform you, our approach now is to break our legal division into teams focused on each topic. So instead of everybody doing everything, we sort of have broken out teams. But between those teams, we cover the entire legal division at this point, working on these rulemaking topics.
So our goal of having more bite-sized rulemaking seems to be only partially met, maybe. Well, thank you all for your work on that. That's very helpful. How involved do you think the data broker audit rulemaking process will be?
To be honest, in comparison to some of the other topics we're exploring, it actually is probably the lighter touch one in terms of we have the benefit of having recently completed the cybersecurity audit requirements, regulations, and this similarly will be merely defining the scope and sort of procedures of fulfilling the audit requirements in the DELETE Act.
Okay. Well, this looks like a terrific plan to me. I hope that the board will have the opportunity to hear about some of the preliminary information that comes in when you deem it appropriate. I continue to think that these topics are critically important. Mr. Liebert already mentioned notices, and I think that is something that he has rightly identified as, I don't know if I would call it a gap, but an issue that needs to be addressed, and that goes hand in hand with reducing friction and exercising privacy rights. We wouldn't have to worry as much necessarily about some of the notices if the more that we can reduce friction. So I will ask if there are comments, questions from the board. Yeah, Mr. Liebert. Mr. Liebert.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. Is this on okay? Excellent. You did allude to something that is obviously very important for all of us, and that is that we engage in as helpful education efforts as possible with businesses, particularly small businesses who are now having to understand and implement the regulations that we have been working on. And I wanted to suggest that we think about perhaps and I'm not sure if this is happening or not, Phil, but even kind of a more formal process that brings in representatives of small business and other businesses, for example, to meet with staff to raise any concerns they have about misunderstandings or lack of understandings about issues. I know the governor's led the way in this regard in pulling together kind of groups of representatives to address these very complicated, often technological issues. So I was just curious to what extent that might be a model that the agency could think of in terms of making outreach efforts to have kind of a formal input process, if you would, and with consumers as well, perhaps. It's kind of like focus groups. Tell us what you're struggling with as these regulations are coming on board. How can we potentially develop educational materials for you in a targeted way that will be most helpful, that kind of concept?
Absolutely. I think those are fantastic suggestions. And we've been keeping sort of all options on the table. I've described to you today sort of the concrete plans for materials, but we have been also planning more robust outreach to the business community to make sure nobody's caught by surprise and that there is opportunity to get clarity if clarity is needed.
Thank you. Mr. McTaggart?
Yeah, I'm excited to see these, and every time I come to a website that tells me to go to some Google Analytics thing to opt out, and they can't really opt out, and they're not too sure if they sell, I'm just like, oh, please. So I'm so happy that the reducing friction one is on there, and I think it's hand in glove with all these other ones, but good job, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart. Yes, Mr. Liebert, please go ahead.
These are also potential opportunities for what I refer to as informational hearings, but that's coming out of my experience working in the legislature, and that is that obviously hand in hand with this would be opportunities if we're talking about, for example, challenges about notices and disclosures, an opportunity to have experts also educate us and the public, if you will, about what these challenges are, et cetera. And I know we might have a discussion of that later, but I think it is consistent with what we're talking about here in terms of the rulemaking process as well.
That's certainly something that can be part of a preliminary rulemaking process. Sorry, Mr. Litt, I wasn't sure if you...
Oh, yeah, no, sorry, apologies. Absolutely, yeah, I think, I know this board has discussed informational hearings in the past, and I think I anticipate staff will be, that may be included in our recommendations in terms of just further building education awareness of certain issues for the board and for the public generally on topics we're seeing. So I've instructed my staff that where this is a focus to recommend on where we can make strides with our regulations, we may come up with recommendations external of the rulemaking process as well.
Thank you. Seeing no other immediate comments or questions from the board on this particular topic, I'd like to see if there is public comment, and after that we'll recall the previous topic.
Okay, this is for agenda item number 8, regulations update. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. This is for agenda item number 8, regulations update. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carwile. With that, we will recall agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 7 is a discussion and possible action regarding a rulemaking petition to amend existing regulations to incorporate frameworks for minimal functional mode and a tiered consent structure for general purpose consumer devices. And so when we left this conversation, we had some positive feedback on the substance of the proposal from the board, and some impossibility that was presented to us with the Administrative Procedure Act requirements, along with the Administrative Procedure Act requirements for introducing a rulemaking package. The timelines simply collide such that we could not comply with both of them at once. And so I am going to propose that we accept the recommendation to deny the petition, because we cannot actually grant the petition given the inconsistencies in the law, but would like to continue the discussion of whether to request that staff continue to explore the topic, perhaps under the reducing friction bucket, or to take other measures to see if there is a way for the petitioner's ideas to make it into policy. Yes, Mr. McTaggart.
Great. And I'd just like to add to that one of those outcomes might be as simple as the petitioner on their own, if they choose to, contacting either Director Kemp or General Counsel Laird. And I'm sure it would be, it'd be enjoyable to walk a young person across the legislature and say, here's this assembly member who's already doing this bill. Why don't you, because they're always looking for someone young to headline the thing and to make a big deal. It might be really win-win, and it might be something for us that we ended up working, which didn't take a lot of staff time because it would be a legislation. So that's just a thought. Thanks.
And I can't help myself but just note that in this instance, the legislature could potentially move much faster than we could via the rulemaking process.
Thank you, Mr. Laird. Ms. Hamer?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good suggestion. I also think that the petitioner's points fit really well within what we're supposed to be doing and could fall within the reducing friction of exercising privacy rights. I think that the petitioner made some very good points about the impacts to privacy by design, data minimization, purpose limitation, and proportional consent, probably most importantly with his or her petition. And I thought that they resonated with me as things that this is kind of what we're supposed to be doing.
Thank you, Ms. Hamer. So would your proposal be that it's not an either or proposition, that perhaps the agency could, if the petitioner desired, could introduce the petitioner to the legislature, and that would be a potential path, but that it would also be valuable for legal division to explore further some of the concepts in the petition for rulemaking or other activity. Is that your proposal?
That would be correct. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I agree very much with Ms. Hamer that the petition is well grounded in some of the foundational concepts and duties that we have in the CCPA. So I do support that, with the caveat that we and I'm sure that we all agree that we certainly would understand and go with staff's discretion on how they can allocate resources. Any other comments? Ms. Ozer.
I just wanted to second Member Liebert's conversation about informational hearings and the opportunity, to both bring sort of these types of issues and other types of best practices that are sort of emerging from academia and also from people who are working in practice about ways to really reduce friction, whether that be actually default settings that don't require individuals to have to take action, but that it's the default, as well as just there's so much good work happening in terms of thinking about how we really make these rights real in practice for people. So I would definitely support the opportunity for the agency to be elevating some of the good thinking that's out there right now, and for us to the agency to really be at the cutting edge of those types of interventions.
Thank you, Ms. Ozer. All right. With that, I will request public comment and let everybody know that I intend to request a motion to deny the rulemaking petition that was received on February 9th due to current resource constraints and the need to further explore. Well, hang on. I had this as a substantive motion, but I think that it would more appropriately be sort of a procedural motion. And so let me adjust and start again. So the motion that I will request is to deny the rulemaking petition received on February 9th due to constraints imposed by the timelines set forth in the Administrative Procedures Act and other relevant laws, and to request that staff further explore the feasibility and impacts of concepts described in the petition, and to advise the board in the future about potential actions that are related to the information and positions taken in the petition. Okay, may we find if there's public comment, Ms. Carwile?
This is for agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding rulemaking petition to amend existing regulations to incorporate frameworks for minimal functional mode and a tiered consent structure for general purpose consumer devices. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. Again, this is for agenda item number 7, and I believe we have a few hands raised. Dylan Hoffman, I'm going to unmute you at this time. Go ahead and begin when you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, Dylan Hoffman on behalf of TechNet, and really appreciate the opportunity to provide comments today, and greatly appreciate the board will not be moving forward, at least according to the motion, will not be moving forward with the petition at this time, but do want to raise some concerns that we have with the substance of the proposal and think it warrants significantly more study and discussion. First, the petition extends beyond the intended scope of both the agency and the CCPA. The CCPA was enacted to govern how businesses collect and process personal information, not to impose product design mandates or engineering requirements on consumer electronic devices. By proposing a device functional integrity standard, the petition effectively recasts the agency as a product safety regulator without explicit legislative authority to do so. The petition also misconstrues pretty ordinary commercial transactions. Consumers voluntarily purchase devices and agree to terms of service in exchange for valuable integrated features and services. And labeling these routine marketplace arrangements as duress or coercion establishes a pretty troubling precedent that could be applied broadly to standard service agreements across industries. Second, the petition's assertions regarding technical feasibility oversimplify complex realities. Its comparison to cookie consent frameworks, for example, overlooks the material differences between web browser environments and fully integrated device ecosystems. Core functions such as device security, software updates, warranty administration, and fraud prevention rely on account-linked identity verification that cannot simply or easily be separated or decoupled without consequence. The proposal also fails to account for legitimate security purposes. Device activation processes are specifically structured to safeguard consumers against theft, fraud, and unauthorized access. And permitting fully anonymous device use would erode these well-established consumer protections. Finally, the approach outlined in the petition is likely to diminish the consumer experience. Mandating granular feature-by-feature consent for enhanced services would burden users with repetitive prompts and produce a fragmented and sometimes confusing interface, undermining rather than advancing meaningful transparency. It would also place California consumers at a competitive disadvantage. State-specific device requirements would increase compliance costs and operational complexity, potentially leading to delayed product launches, reduced functionality, or higher prices for California residents relative to consumers in other states. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Ronak Delami, I'm going to unmute you at this time. You'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead and begin when you're ready. Ronak Delami, go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Oh, sorry. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes.
Thank you. Ronak Delami with Cal Chamber. We appreciate the recommendation to technically deny the petition, but given board member comments, including the desire to incorporate the content into other rulemakings, we do feel it necessary to comment, however much it feels a little bit after the fact now at this point. I do want to say, we'll echo a bit of TechNet's comments here, but again, want to emphasize some of these points. While our members strongly support consumer privacy protections, we believe this petition is calling for the agency action that would constitute regulatory overreach that we would have to strongly object to. In the simplest of terms, the CCPA is a law that regulates how businesses handle personal information they collect. It in no way authorizes the agency to dictate product design and engineering standards for consumer electronics. Mandating a quote device functional integrity standard transforms this entity into a product safety regulator without clear and necessary legislative authorization to do so. The framing of coercion, we believe, fundamentally mischaracterizes voluntary commercial transactions, as was mentioned. Consumers freely choose to purchase devices. They're not coerced into it. When voluntarily purchasing those devices, they may accept terms of service in exchange for valuable integrated features. To now label those standard commercial practices built on choice as duress sets a dangerous precedent that would apply to virtually any service agreement. The petition's technical feasibility claims are also oversimplified in our view. The analogy to cookie consent frameworks overlooks the fundamental differences between web browser architecture and integrated device ecosystems, as was pointed out. Device security, software updates, warranty services, and fraud prevention all depend on account-linked identity verification that can't just simply be decoupled. The proposal misses legitimate security considerations that device activation workflows are designed to protect consumers, and allowing fully anonymous device operation therefore weakens consumer protections instead of strengthening them. We note that the proposal in fact risks degrading the consumer experience, creating consumer harm and unintended consequences, which includes putting California consumers at a competitive disadvantage. Requiring contextual feature-by-feature consent at every enhanced service will frustrate consumers with repetitive permission dialogues and create fragmented, confusing user experiences, not a transparent one. Moreover, California-specific device requirements will increase costs and complexity, potentially resulting in delayed product availability, reduced features, or higher prices, even for California residents. Many of these concerns are due to the fact that the petition lacks necessary industry input, including on practicality. While we urge the agency to refrain from rulemaking in areas that extend beyond its authority, we do encourage you to convene technical workshops to understand the real-world implications of such proposals before jumping into a costly formal rulemaking process that could lead to serious consequences for consumers and our economy, even within other rulemaking processes. The petition's reliance on academic research and enterprise standards such as NIST does not reflect consumer market realities. And finally, ambiguity creates enforcement challenges, to say the least, and sets regulated entities up for failure. So terms like strictly necessary, ancillary, and contextual consent are undefined and will generate costly disputes over interpretation. The agency shouldn't adopt standards that cannot be consistently applied. I'll end it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If there are any other members of the public who'd like to speak at this time, please go ahead and raise your hand using Zoom's raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. Again, this is on agenda item number 7. Omar, I'm going to unmute you at this time. You'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Hello. I need help finding the petition, but I just hearing people speak about having to like sign up for things as under distress. I agree with that. I recently had a phone that was broken. I had to switch to iPhone. I can't download anything without making an account, without giving my private information. I can't talk to my family. It is distress when corporations force you to give up private information or to make accounts. And I just want that statement to be included. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, this is for agenda item number 7. If there are any other members of the public who'd like to speak at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time.
Thank you. Thank you to the commenters for their thoughtful comments. I'm sure staff will consider questions of authority and feasibility if the board does decide to request that staff look into the concepts in the petition further. Ms. Gildair, did you have
Yeah, just the
Something
final commenter mentioned they didn't know where the petition could be found. So I just wanted to clarify it's available on our website, which is cppa.ca.gov, and it's under the meetings section. Today's date associated is one of the meeting materials available.
Yes, I think it's marked agenda item number 7.
That's correct.
And there will be a PDF that is the petition itself, if the commenter would like to explore it further. Again, thanks to all the commenters for their input. And I will now ask for if there is a board member who would like to make the motion I stated earlier.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart. May I have a second? Ms. Hamer, thank you. I have a motion from Mr. McTaggart and a second from Ms. Hamer. Ms. Carwile, would you please perform the roll call vote?
Yes. This is a roll call for the motion as stated by the chair. Board Member Hamer,
Yes.
Board Member Liebert. Aye. Board Member McTaggart.
Aye.
Board Member Ozer.
Aye.
Chair Urban.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeses.
The motion carries with a vote of 5-0. Once again, I thank the petitioner for alerting us to this possibility and for their robust civic participation. We are grateful to consider your petition today, and we will hear more about it later. Thanks to everyone for their consideration. We find ourselves at a bit of a crossroad. My guess is that people's stomachs are beginning to grumble and lunch is beginning to sound good. We also have the option to take the public comment on items not on the agenda, possibly talk about future agenda items, which would leave us only with the closed session item and adjournment, such that we could go to lunch and the board could discuss the closed session item and we could return only to adjourn. However, I do not want to impose an unspecified amount of time between everybody and lunch if they're not comfortable with it. So what do people think?
Madam Chair, could I suggest that we reverse the order, take number 10 now and then number 9? I'd be willing to do that before lunch. My thought is people are on the East Coast watching, it's a Friday, and if we take number 10, I think that would let whoever needs to leave the meeting earlier could probably leave if they're watching on
If
Zoom.
they don't have a public
They don't have
comment
a,
off
if they don't have a public comment, and if
Yeah.
they do have a public comment, also it saves them time. So I would be encourage us to do it all before lunch.
Wonderful, thank you. Sorry for talking over you. I had caught up to you and it was a great idea. So if other folks are down with that, okay, let's take item number 10, which is our item for future agenda items, which I mentioned at the top of the meeting. This is one of the 2 exceptions to items, discussing items that are not formally on the agenda. For this item, it is only in order to discuss whether we might want to put a topic on an agenda for a future board meeting. I first want to touch on the regularized calendar and upcoming items. The public and the board can find our calendar of quarterly meetings on the events page of the agency's website. Today, we covered the administration and budget update. We have deferred the executive director's annual review for a bit. He was hired in April of 2025. What is on the schedule is the standard schedule. And so we will defer that for a little while. Our next meeting will be on May 7th, and the regularized items that we often do on May 7th are, as alluded to earlier, hearing about and possibly taking positions on pending legislation, our annual enforcement update and discussion of priorities for enforcement, and our annual public affairs update. And then on August 7th, we have a standard item for discussing the budget plan for upcoming budget development direction for the staff, and the annual hiring update, including diversity and inclusion metrics. We finish out the year on November 6th this year, discussing the next round of annual legislation proposals and priorities, an annual intergovernmental affairs update and priorities, the board calendar for 2027, and regulation proposals and priorities. So what you've seen in the meeting today is a lot of these topics from 2025 are now in progress in 2026. We typically meet on Friday. The quarterly meetings are all Friday dates. We also discussed in November, and it has come up a couple of times today, holding informational sessions. I have not an allergy to hearing. I'm not sure what that entails, and it might entail a public meeting and so forth. So anyway, informational sessions or hearings on some Thursdays before the board meeting for interested board members or on other days. And we have discussed those a little bit under agenda item 8 today. So I'd like to return to that in just a minute once I manage to go through the list that the running list I've been keeping. Mr. McTaggart had some regulation updates that I think have been incorporated into the packages as to how deletion happens and what companies need to disclose when they're deleting the data. Mr. McTaggart had a question about how concretely we can guide consumers for staff, and those are just in the hopper, I believe. I had an item about employee and employer relationship in data, and I think that is being incorporated into the rulemaking. I have my standard request for when we have the capacity to develop maybe model notices for businesses, and that is in the hopper as well. We have brought up GDPR adequacy a few times, and I think that is being explored. Mr. Worth, when he was on the board, suggested, and I am carrying it forward as well, a discussion of small businesses and who is covered by our law and regulations, who falls out of it as a small business. And I think I will, with Mr. Liebert's permission, add to that general sort of outreach and understanding to small businesses, outreach to and understanding of small businesses and how they're impacted by the law. Ms. Hamer had a request eventually for a briefing on a fourth party issue that was brought up by a speaker, and that brings us back to the informational sessions, which I have on my list here from Mr. Liebert, a request for exploration of privacy policies and how they work. And would anybody like to add anything? I'm not looking at the team because my guess is yes, Mr. McTaggart.
So you had alluded to it, and I just wanted to get a sense, because it's been on the agenda for a while, where that I'm in the regs right now, and if I look at 7022H, which none of you have at your fingertips, but I'll just say that's the one where it says the business may present different options to delete. And I think it's just a question of exploring what would be involved. Do we say must present? And of course, the business is going to come back and say, well, you got 3,000 pieces of information or 40,000. How can we give you 40,000 choices? So, there's got to be some kind of a bucket. But I always come back to the thing is I want to tell Google to delete my information. Does that include my photos? Because I actually don't want my photos to be deleted. And it's hard to figure that out. So I just think it's a relatively small tweak. Nothing's small. It's easy if you say it fast, but that's my point. I don't think we've done it yet, but I would love that, because every time I go to delete it, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do that. So thanks. And of course, they don't make it easy.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart. Ms. Ozer?
Just on the broader topic of informational sessions, just on some of the emerging best practices on reducing friction in exercising privacy rights. So I would just say more generally, it would be wonderful to maybe have an informational session that delved into that to be able to inform the agency and us.
Thank you, Ms. Ozer. Mr. Liebert?
I'm not sure by your glance as to whether we need to have a more formal conversation about how to incorporate the informational hearings. I know that's potentially challenging for members if we're going to have a Thursday afternoon Friday hearing. And I don't know to what extent, in terms of all of the work that's before the agency and the board, whether it's practical to do it during a Friday normal board hearing. So I don't know when you think that conversation would be useful. So.
Yes, Mr. McTaggart.
Well, I think the chair has been so efficient that recently the meetings have become more manageable, and there's maybe an opportunity just to do it. I personally would find the 2-day thing would be quite cumbersome, but if we could do a Friday afternoon session, because we seem to be able to be getting, and I don't want to prejudge future meetings, which might be more complicated, but it does seem like we could fit in an hour session during the day. I would urge, as opposed to doing 2 days myself.
I think I would ask the board's indulgence for me to work with staff to figure out what is feasible. I imagine it probably is calibrated by a number of factors, including what is the topic, how many speakers would we need to have, does it need to be a noticed board meeting, and to be a noticed board meeting, anytime the board itself would like to participate. Of course, we need to do that under Bagley-Keene. But if it were, for example, a remote Zoom session and we were listening in, there may be more flexibility there. So if with the board's indulgence, I could work with the staff to and find out from them what they think is feasible for various topics. We could try that, and then everybody can yell at me in the next meeting and we can adjust if needed. Okay, great. And does that work, Mr. Laird and Mr. Kemp? Does that work for a process, which is just that we work with you to figure out what the right process is?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would also like to propose an informational session. And I recognize that, again, there are limited resources. So this is a proposal, and certainly the staff should take into account resources. But I do think it's an urgent issue. And that, again, is the issue of what is happening to Americans' data at a federal level, and federal efforts to preempt state protections for their citizens and residents' information. I would not ask that we bring this to the level of discussion that one might have in an informational session, where we could all learn more and think through what might be possible for the agency, if I were not convinced that this were not a very serious and indeed an emergency moment in our civic life. We have been put in the position, and by we, I mean Americans and I mean Californians, of having to rethink fundamental understandings and fundamental responsibilities and duties that the federal government has taken on with regard to some of our most sensitive personal information, including health data, tax data, employment data, financial data, all of which is held in trust for us by the federal government and protected by long-standing laws, organizational practices, and indeed technical measures. These laws grew out of a rupture of trust between the public and the federal government in the 1970s, and have been in place in the decades since, and now are under, I can't even call it strain, they are under attack. The place of states in this situation is, I think, has to be to take the part of our residents. And what that means legally and under our authority is, of course, an open question, and I would like to understand more about that, should resources allow, in an informational session. Mr. Liebert?
I think you said that so perfectly, and I would certainly support and urge that we consider that as something that we would do at our next board meeting in May, if we can make that work. As you said, this is urgent. Time is of the essence. and an evaluation of this is so critically important.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. Other comments or questions from the board? With that, Ms. Carwile, I'll ask if there's public comment on this item.
This is for agenda item number 10, future agenda items, including potential topics for informational meetings. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. This is for agenda item number 10. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Oh, we just got a hand raised. W. Calvi, I'm going to unmute you at this time. Go ahead and speak. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, actually, it's Dr. Calvin Witcher. I didn't update my item there. But my name is Dr. Calvin Witcher. I'm the Vice President of Information Technologies in the death care industry here in Southern California. Recently completed my doctorate really on the CCPA and non-factors among small business enterprises. And as the CCPA rules continue to evolve, particularly with the CPRA and updates and developments and regulatory guidance, there's an impact on the death care industry that's often under-examined: cemeteries, mortuaries, funeral homes, etc., including interment rights, next of kin, lots of financial data, genealogical records, etc. Unlike many industries, our data is permanent. It's intergenerational, and it intersects with privacy laws and other public record laws as well. So updates involving deletion rights and data minimization, etc., are of interest to us. For that reason, I do welcome an opportunity to be involved with outreach efforts and advisory discussions or whatever from a stakeholder's perspective to help inform the death care industry on CCPA rules and updates. Many of the facilities within this industry are often underinformed about this area. I'm doing what I can to bring that to light, but I would be happy to serve as a resource or participate in any roundtables to assist in any educational efforts for this industry. Thank you again for the opportunity to make a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. This is for agenda item number 10, future agenda items, including potential topics for informational meetings. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. Madam Chair, we don't have any other hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Carwile, and thank you to the commenter for the comment. We now turn to agenda item number 9, which is our item for public comment for items not on the agenda. During this item, the public is welcome to make comments on topics that have not been on the agenda for today. The board, however, may not discuss or act on any matter that is raised during this public comment session, except to, I guess, recall the agenda item and discuss whether to put it on a future agenda. We will thus not react to any comments, but please understand that is not for lack of interest. It is so that both the boards and agencies and the commenters' interests can best be met. Is there any public comment for this item, Ms. Carwile?
Yes. And again, this is for item number 9, public comment on items not on the agenda. Omar, go ahead and speak. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm a student of the California Community Colleges system, and our systems and their business contractors need help. We're practically forced to use Canvas by Instructure. The first year, I was not aware that it wasn't hosted by the district and our information would be going to a corporation. I was surprised again to find our communications not being encrypted with something that has our keys, like something like the Signal protocol, and that the company is holding on to all the student and professor conversations. There's no point where I ever gave consent for any of this. They have a CCPA obligations in their contract at the California Community Colleges Foundation. And it looks like they're violating some of those. So I put a couple right to know requests in and haven't got anything back. A lot of the sections include limiting data, but they have learning tool integrations, they're third-party companies that have their own policies, and professors can input our information there without telling us they're using them. There's different analytic systems that are being used, like even logs that just see if you're on focus in your browser. They have their commitment to transparency. If you look for their government requests policy, they said they were going to report on government requests. They stopped in the beginning of 2024. Like what was spoken earlier before, there's questions about subpoenas coming from DHS and stuff like that too. One of our contractors at our district level, Google, is responding to administrative subpoenas, not even ordered by a judge. At the district level too, we have contracts with Genentech and Axon that have AI services, and our biometric information might be being processed by these services. You guys are there to promote public awareness and cooperation with agencies. We need that. Our students and our student governments and our governments aren't aware of our rights. I've never met another student aware of it. Our professors never explained this to us. I like the work that you guys are doing, and I really hope you can help out, because right now it's terrifying to go to school. Thank you.
Comment? This is for agenda item number 9, public comments on items not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand by using the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 if you're joining us by phone. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Carwile, and thank you very much for the comments. With that, we will move to item number 11, which is a closed session item. The board will retire to closed session to discuss this item, which includes 2 matters. The first is personnel matters under authority of Government Code Section 11126 Subdivision A1, and the other is pursuant to Government Code Section 1126 Subdivisions E1 and 2A. The board will meet in closed session to confer and receive advice from legal counsel regarding litigation for which disclosing the names would jeopardize the agency's ability to conclude existing settlement negotiations to its advantage. So with that, we will repair to closed session, and we will return when we are ready for the last item, which is item number 12, adjournment. Thanks to everybody who participated in the meeting today. If shockingly you're not here when we come back just to adjourn, we very much appreciate everyone's participation in the process, and we'll be back after closed session. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you for waiting, everyone. And we will now move to agenda item number 12 on today's California Privacy Protection Agency Board meeting. Agenda item number 12 is adjournment, and it is our final item, of course. I would like to thank everyone, board members, staff, and members of the public for all of their contributions to the meeting today and to the board's work. And may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Absolutely. I so move.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mr. Liebert. May I have a second? Thank you. I have a second from Mr. McTaggart. Ms. Carwile, will you please perform the roll call?
Yes, the motion is to adjourn. Board Member Hamer. Board Member Liebert.
Aye.
Board Member McTaggart.
Aye.
Board Member Ozer.
Aye.
Chair Urban.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 4 yeses and 1 not voting.
Thank you very much. The motion carries with a vote of 4-0, and this meeting of the California Privacy Protection Agency Board hereby stands adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.